FPS win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
The outcome of a battle is often the result of the superposition of many factors. If we calculate based on absolute strength, there is a huge difference between the Nongkong Corps and the Dongfeng Corps. They have 4 armed cargo ships and 6 speedboats. They have a total of 10 heavy machine guns, dozens of rocket launchers, and 4 individual recoilless guns. There were more than 200 of them in total, with more than 200 guns. However, they lost, and their loss was inexplicable. Of course, it was not inexplicable at all. First of all, when it comes to tactical arrangements, they are actually not amateurs. In order to obtain intelligence, they sent out helicopters for reconnaissance. In order to avoid being ambushed in the river, they split into 2 groups before approaching possible ambush points. In order to break through the visual blockade zone established by the Dongfeng Corps with smoke, they advanced quickly at all costs. If we ignore the actual battlefield situation, such a strategy can truly be described as both stable and pragmatic. But the problem is that the situation on the battlefield will change. The helicopter was shot down, and all they could rely on was the last intelligence it sent out, and they did not get accurate information. After splitting into 2 groups, the ground troops were blocked by the rapidly spreading wildfire and had no way to go to the battlefield. After a rapid advance, they had already gained an advantage, but as the distance shortened, they entered the harvesting zone of Chen Chen, who was in hot form. Even the last decision, withdraw and reorganize the attack, was not wrong. However, the only unexpected situation that occurred on the battlefield cut off their retreat. The forest fire ignited the leaked fuel in the helicopter, causing the rockets to explode. The rockets, flying around in a disorderly manner, just happened to hit the retreating fleet, forcing them to stop in deep water. Morale had already collapsed, and this sudden incident, which actually did not cause much fundamental damage, became the last straw that broke the camel's back. In fact, if Kong could stand up decisively at this time to stabilize the morale of the army, even if they insisted on reaching the shallows and then abandoned the ship, what would they lose? It was only the loss of a burning ship, but he did not stand up. So, when the first person started jumping into the river, everything was over. Among the only 6 people left in the Dongfeng Corps, 1 was responsible for follow-up shooting at the targets in the river, the other 4 suppressed the 3 nearby ships with intermittent firepower, and the last person, Li Bang, who was wearing heavy armor, rushed up the gangway to the deck of ship number 1 with all his grenades and the A-12. He didn't even bother to clean up the cabin of ship number 1, but instead threw a bunch of grenades and stun grenades into it. Then he stood behind the heavy machine gun and began indiscriminately firing at all targets in front of him. When the gunshots rang out, even on the cargo ship that was hit first and stranded on the outermost shoal, everyone began to abandon ship and flee. There was almost no resistance. Under the cover of heavy machine guns, other members of the Dongfeng Corps also boarded ship number 1 and occupied the 3 heavy machine gun firing points on the ship. There was still a Type 78 82mm recoilless gun on the ground that had not been fired yet. Go rushed forward to straighten the tripod and fired directly at the number 3 ship, which was still moving. With a loud bang, a big hole was blown out at the stern of the cargo ship, and it finally stopped at the edge of the outer shallow water area. There was no more resistance, and everyone was running for their lives. Only the 6-man team of the Dongfeng Corps was pouring out their firepower coldly, but firmly. 10 minutes later, the sun had risen completely, but the black smoke from the burning forest fire blocked out most of the light. There were corpses floating everywhere in the river, and the scene looked like doomsday. At this time, there were no moving targets on the entire river. Chen Chen acted promptly and ordered the cabin to be cleared. Simple CQB combat. Li Bang was still at the forefront, using stun grenades to clear the way and AA-12 to clear the way. The last 2 people hiding in the cabin of ship number 1 were killed, leaving 1 team member to operate the heavy machine gun, and the rest began to advance towards ships number 3 and number 4 in the distance. Ship number 2 was no longer a concern. The rockets that exploded had ignited its fuel tank, and the ship was now burning fiercely. Captain, the high-value target is on ship number 3. It should be a commanding leader. Yang Shu, the observer, provided key information. Chen Chen did not hesitate and immediately gave the order. White dog, turn on the thermal imaging and follow me. Are there any more smoke bombs? Throw a few onto the ship. The moment the order was given, 3 smoke bombs flew towards the deck of ship number 3. Under the cover of others, Chen Chen and Go successfully boarded the ship. Then Chen Chen kicked the smoke bomb into the cabin. A moment later, someone came out coughing. Chen Chen fired without hesitation, but just as he was about to throw a grenade inside, a voice suddenly rang out. Don't hit me! Don't hit me! I surrender! I surrender! Come out! Chen Chen shouted. Everyone line up! To the door! Right away! Right away! Ahem! Chen silently counted a few numbers, then threw the grenade with the pin already pulled out of its hand. Boom! There was no other sound in the cabin. Surrender and no killing? Are you kidding me? Who knows if you have a gun or a bomb? All is fair in war. The space in the cabin is too large, and grenades may not be able to cover all blind spots. But it is different if you line up. After waiting quietly for a moment, Li Bangding entered the cabin first. After a few gunshots, the cabin of ship number 3 was completely cleared. Next, it was ship number 4 in the distance. This time, they really didn't catch any enemies. After confirming that the area had been cleared, Chen Chen immediately gave the order. Return to the position and rescue the wounded. In fact, the 6 people now all have some injuries on their bodies. Yang Shu's leg was scratched by shrapnel from the explosion, scraping off a piece of flesh, and is still bleeding. Li Bang's neck was scratched by the bullet that ricocheted from his bulletproof vest, and it almost hit his artery. Go's bulletproof vest had no shoulder guards, and he was shot in the shoulder, and he could no longer lift his left hand. Chen Chen's own bulletproof vest ceramic plate was pierced, but fortunately the bullet only embedded in the flesh. But these are all minor injuries. Those who have already fallen to the ground are basically beyond saving, because all those people died in the fire zone. Before the battle was over, Chen Chen did not order a rescue because he knew that it would be impossible to handle both ends with just the few remaining people in the Dongfang Corps. If the rhythm of the attack is interrupted and the enemy attacks back, there will be only one way to go: death. This is cruel, but as the saying goes, no one can live without death. So, when he returned to the ambush position, he was ready to face 4 charred corpses, but what he didn't expect was that there were still people alive by the water. A short man with a big bird beside him. Seeing Chen Chen return, the short-legged man spoke with difficulty, explaining intermittently. The big bird dragged me back, crawled here, old charcoal and stone are hopeless. Burning in the forest. Without bothering to listen to him, Chen Chen immediately squatted down to check the big bird's injuries. There was a 5-centimeter penetrating wound above the knee, and Big Bird applied compression and hemostatic bandage himself. In addition to the tourniquet, he actually used 2 valve core tapes used for bicycle tires. This saved his life, and although the blood was bright red, it flowed very slowly. The aorta is injured. Number 1, medical kit. Chen Chen spoke, then reached out and pinched the big bird's neck, feeling the pulsation of the carotid artery. Fortunately, it was very faint, but it was still beating. As long as you are not dead, there is hope. At this time, Li Bang had already opened the medical kit, and Chen Chen continued. Adrenaline, too. Military adrenaline does not come in the big syringes seen in the movies, but in small disposable tubes of toothpaste like those in hotels, except with a needle. Li Bang deftly injected adrenaline into the big bird's arm, while Chen Chen pulled out a surgical blade from the first aid kit and cut the wound on the big bird's leg. The festered muscles pierced by the bullet were immediately cut open. Chen Chen reached his hand directly into the wound, which was large enough to accommodate 4 fingers, and within a few seconds, he found the aorta that had shrunk into a ball. This kind of operation was also shown in Black Hawk Down, but that scene was exaggerated. Because of the pull of muscles and connective tissue, it is actually very rare for blood vessels to contract into the abdominal cavity. Most of the time, like what Chen Chen is facing now, they only contract a few centimeters or a dozen centimeters toward the proximal end. This gave Chen Chen room to maneuver. He pulled out the blood vessel, pinched it between his index and middle fingers, and pressed harder with his thumb, the same way he pinched an eel. Hemostats. Threat. He spoke briefly, and Li Bang immediately handed him what he needed. The boring subjects in the previous training finally came in handy at this moment. Chen Chen clamped the aorta and continued. Zip ties. Tulpa pins. Elastic bandage in just 2 minutes. Chen Chen finished treating the wound on the big bird's leg. To sum it up, it can be done in just a few simple sentences. Pull out the blood vessel, clamp it with hemostat, lock the hemostat with thread and cable tie, and then fix the hemostat to the thigh with tape and pins. It is very simple, very rough, and very inhumane. If this happened in the operating room, Chen Chen would be taken to court as soon as he got off the operating table. Because his treatment method comes at the cost of a high probability of sacrificing the entire leg, and he doesn't consider the so-called prognosis at all. But so what? Let's just stay alive first. After finishing everything, Chen Chen tried to loosen the tourniquet on the big bird's leg a little. The exposed blood vessels immediately bulged a little, but fortunately, they did not rupture and no bleeding spurted out. I can't die. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he feel like caring about the injury of the short man beside him. How are you? He asked. I was shot in the stomach. Chen Chen unbuttoned Shorty's bulletproof vest, wiped away the blood accumulated on his skin, and checked the wound. He was shot in the abdomen. The 3rd-level bulletproof vest failed to block the bullet from the enemy's light machine gun. Fortunately, the power of the bullet had been greatly reduced. The bullet tore the abdominal cavity, but it also lost enough rolling power and did not injure the main organs. The blood flow rate was very slow, and his injury was almost exactly the same as Shurdakai's. You won't die. Number 1. Give him an injection of adrenaline and bandage him. Later, help the Niao wrap up his legs and put splints on both sides to isolate them. Be gentle. Clear. Li Bang took action immediately, while Chen Chen wiped the blood off his hands on his pants and picked up the gun again. At this moment, his image was extremely terrifying, but the other people who were still standing looked at him with shock and awe that were difficult to conceal. Can kill people and save people. Moreover, even when he was rescuing people, his actions revealed an impeccable order and efficiency. First, deal with the most urgent wound of the big bird and stop the bleeding cleanly and efficiently. The bleeding has stopped, the priority is lowered, and then go to see the dwarf. The short man confirmed that the bird would not die, but needed to be bandaged first, so he ordered him to be bandaged first and then deal with the big bird's still exposed blood vessels. He controlled and executed all the details incredibly, never making mistakes and never giving up. Captain, Yang Shu suddenly felt that he wanted to say something, but before he could say anything, he was interrupted by Chen Chen. Follow me aboard ship number 3 and identify the high-value target. Clear. So they said no more, left 1 person to guard the wounded and keep watch, and the remaining 4 boarded the number 3 boat, which was no longer moving. Which one is the high-value target? Who is the leader? Chen Chen asked. Yang Shu scratched his face in embarrassment and replied, Number 1 beat up his face so it's hard to recognize. Wait, this is it. Chen Chen looked at the corpse pointed by Yang Shu and didn't see anything special for a moment. He subconsciously turned the other person's face with his gun, and when the iconic scar on the other person's neck appeared in front of him, Chen Chen couldn't help but scream. Fuck. Sang Kong? He did not hide his surprise because he really did not expect that this guy would actually come to the battlefield in person. This hangman died just like that. It was really too easy for him. Lian Eli was stabbed 12 times before his death. but he was only hit by a grenade and a gun. Chen Chen sighed and shook his head slightly. Never mind. Just die. In one operation, 2 of the 3 main leaders of the Nakam gang were eliminated, although they were not the main targets at all. But it's okay. At the same time, based on the number of corpses visible to the naked eye, the Dongfeng Corps lost at least 40 people in this battle on the river. The remaining enemies have all fled into the jungle. Without a leader to lead them, they probably won't come back. 2 of our own people were killed, and 2 were seriously injured. This casualty ratio is very shocking. But Chen Chen still felt it wasn't worth it, because every life of his men is much more valuable than the life of a drug dealer. No, I just killed a few of your people. How dare you? Next time, it will be your turn. Chen Chen silently took out the satellite phone and dialed He Banxiong's number. Under the blowing of the west wind, the fire devoured all the plants in the triangle area. The combustibles were burned out, and the fire was finally weakened by the river that was dozens of meters wide. The belated reinforcements of the 756th Brigade ran around the fire scene, and the commander of the team was filled with anxiety. With such a big fire and such loud explosions and gunshots, I'm afraid the Dongfeng Corps is in great danger. I'm trying really hard to catch up, but the problem is that my team has its limits. Everyone is exhausted. In this situation, even if they can arrive, their combat effectiveness may not be half of the usual level. Now, there are only a few hundred meters left to the designated position, but no new gunshots have been heard. Finished. The regiment commander silently tightened his grip on the gun in his hand, and then loudly ordered, "Everyone, prepare for battle." In an instant, the emotions of everyone in the team became tense. Do you really want to fight? The person opposite is the most powerful drug dealer in the Golden Triangle. Not only is their armed force no worse than that of the 756th Brigade, but it is even stronger than the 756th Brigade on the water. How to fight? Even if we have the advantage in numbers, the enemy has heavy weapons. If you really can't beat him, just run away. Some people slowed down their pace, and some quietly hid behind the team. The team leader saw all this, but he did not say anything, because in fact his thoughts were the same. However, something happened that he could never have imagined. When he finally passed through the woods and reached the river, what came into his sight was a strange, absurd, yet extremely shocking scene. 4 large ships sank in the water, one of which had been burned into a twisted skeleton, emitting billowing black smoke. Countless corpses were floating on the riverbank, and the slow-flowing shallow water had been dyed red by the mist of blood. After the wildfire, sparks flew out of the dark woods. The newly risen sun radiates warm yellow light in the blue smoke and mist. On the riverbank, there were several figures gathered around a bonfire. Their bodies were covered in blood, but they were holding kettles with white steam rising from them. When his footsteps were noticed, all those people looked back. At this moment, his hair stood on end. A large oil tanker exploded in the Sanfu River section of the Mekong River, killing at least 140 people and injuring 80. The accident caused the temporary suspension of operations in that section of the river, and Laos and Myanmar announced that they would intervene in the investigation. An armed conflict broke out near Wangnanfu Mountain, which caused a forest fire, killing at least 70 people and injuring many others. The 756th Brigade of Southern Shan State claimed responsibility for the incident. It is reported that the armed conflict was a special crackdown on cross-border drug trafficking organized by the 756th Brigade, and the results were remarkable. An explosion occurred at the Dakilaluok Wharf. The casualties at the scene are unknown. The 505th Brigade claimed that the cause of the accident was improper operation by the armored vehicle driver. The Tachalike Regina Hotel was attacked, and the 3rd leader of the Golden Triangle Nakam drug trafficking gang was beheaded. People familiar with the matter said it was a revenge by a private armed organization, and the motive is unclear. The 756th Brigade claimed to have evidence of cooperation between Myanmar and drug traffickers. Myanmar urgently responded that it had never cooperated with or obstructed the local armed forces' anti-drug operations. The Myanmar side questioned the 756th Brigade for entering the Jingdong garrison area without permission. He Banxiong responded, "No shots were fired. It was a routine training exercise." The situation in Jingdong is tense, and the airport is temporarily closed. The above is the main content of today's Shan State News. I am the host, Ji Yu. Next, please watch the Shan State weather forecast. In the ward, Chen Chen was leisurely drinking tea while watching the news on the local TV station in southern Shan State. However, after watching the whole thing, there was actually nothing new. After all, out of a half-hour broadcast, 29 minutes are about myself. The only unrelated piece of news is about strengthening checkpoint control on the Jingdong-Tachalike Highway. If the host wasn't good-looking, he would probably have turned off the TV. However, to say the least, these news did provide details that he did not have. The explosion on the river caused more than 140 casualties, which meant that the dense interception fleet at the time was basically cleared out. There were more than 70 casualties near Wangnanfu, of which about 50 to 60 were directly killed by the Dongfeng Corps, and the rest were burned to death by the fire. The support troops of the 756th Brigade did not fire a single shot. They simply went over to pick up one person. He Banxiong had already begun the siege of Jingdong. With the army approaching, Jingdong Airport was closed, and Jia was considered alive again. He shook his head slightly and adjusted his somewhat stiff sitting posture. The regiment leader Chow Min, who was waiting on the side and was responsible for the support operation, immediately came up and helped him adjust the height of the bed with swift hands and feet. "Sir, is this altitude okay?" His face was full of servile expressions, which should not appear on the face of a regimental commander like him. But in fact, after he led his troops out of the woods and met the Dongfeng Corps that had just experienced a great battle, such servile temperament naturally emerged. 6 people, covered in blood, were drinking water and eating. Although the cavalry were broken and their armor was torn, their momentum on the battlefield soared into the sky. At that moment, Cao Min even believed that if he dared to have the idea of picking fruits or grabbing military merits, those 6 people would definitely pick up their guns again like a tiger into a flock of sheep and bite all 400 people on his side to death. So, he really didn't have any bad intentions. He just followed the man's orders and arranged the receiving ship, the passage for the rapid evacuation of the wounded, and even arranged all the work of collecting the spoils in a daze. He didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did because he knew very well that his 400 men, who seemed to be strong and powerful, were actually only qualified to do odd jobs for them. What else? I thought it was going to be a big battle. I thought it was a divine rescue after the enemy was in danger, but when we finally arrived, they had even finished their breakfast. That's right, I ate breakfast with dozens of corpses and smelled the blood of the enemy. With a team like this, you should be glad that he didn't target you. Go against them? Do you think your life is too long? Can't you tell the height of the eyebrows? Flatter him quickly. What's wrong with doing odd jobs? I'm happy to do it. Of course, his behavior was questioned by some colleagues, especially when they returned to Mengbin and he rushed into the hospital with the wounded. Another regiment commander in charge of regional security actually tried to prevent the lightly injured from being admitted to the intensive care unit on the grounds that the ward is full. Under normal circumstances, Cao Min might have tried to reason with him. But at that moment, he was really filled with passion. You old dang. Don't fucking stop me from making progress. So, he slapped the man in the face without hesitation, loaded his pistol, and all the guards around him drew their guns and aimed, ready to fight to the death if he was not allowed to stop. The other party was really frightened, and he probably didn't expect how serious this incident was. But the next order from brigade commander, he left the other party dumbfounded. Public security work was temporarily handed over to Cao Min, and all other irrelevant personnel were evacuated. What does this mean? This means that I guessed what brigade commander he was thinking. With the military order in hand, Cao Min became more and more excited. He even ordered the hospital to prepare a 20-person team to serve the Dongfeng Court. But of course, he still did some personal service work himself. This is the only way to show your sincerity. Is it too much? Is it embarrassing? If it was before this battle, Cao Min might really feel a little embarrassed. But after this battle, he, with his sensitive sense of smell, had already discovered the key to the problem. In one sentence, what is a warlord? Many standards. Some people have guns, territories, and income, and can compete with major forces. But the most important thing is always one thing: the ability to fight and the ability to defeat others through fighting. Did the Dongfeng Corps do it? Don't just say they did it so well. 10 people accomplished what several hundred people could only do and achieved results that were rarely seen in the 756th Brigade in recent years. So, the answer is already obvious. This so-called mercenary group is a powerful force that has newly emerged on this land. Moreover, it is a force that does not compete with existing forces for territory, but goes out to conquer the world and expand its territory on its own. Who doesn't like it? Brigade commander, he doesn't like it. He likes it too much. Originally, he just wanted to handle, but now what? All the secrets of the 505th Brigade have been exposed. He was so happy that he went crazy. If not for this, today's news wouldn't have revolved entirely around the trajectory of the Dongfeng Corps. Thinking of this, the smile on Cao Min's face became even brighter. Looking at his smiling face, Chen Chen nodded slightly and replied, "The height is okay. Ask someone to help me change the pillow. This pillow is not very comfortable." "Okay, shall we go quickly?" Cao Min's adjutant immediately trotted off to find a pillow, while Cao Min, who remained where he was, continued speaking. "Sir, I have already inquired about the situation of the wounded. There are 2 seriously injured soldiers. One has a broken thigh and must have it amputated. The other has a badly beaten abdomen and will probably need to rest for several months. The other lightly injured are basically fine. The bone in the shoulder that was shot was broken, but it's not serious. The doctor said that it can be restored with autologous bone transplants or synthetic materials. I have asked the doctor to arrange the surgery, and it can be done within a few days at the earliest. Thank you for your trouble," Chen Chen said sincerely. He could understand Cao Min's current mood and felt that he had found a strong supporter. However, he will not bully others just because of their performance. After all, sometimes the best situation is for everyone to be happy. So, there's no harm in being polite. Are you proud of your achievements? Do you want to show off in front of others after winning a battle? There is no need. As long as you are awesome enough, there will be people praising you behind your back, and you don't need to do anything yourself. Looking at Chen Chen's expression and listening to Chen Chen's gentle words, Cao Min couldn't help but feel excited. This path to progress is finally being taken. He quickly replied, Of course. Thank you for your hard work, Commander. You have filled up all the news about Shan State this evening. It's really. Cao Min suddenly didn't know what words to use to describe it, so he could only laugh awkwardly a few times, but fortunately Chen Chen didn't care and just said modestly, "It's just luck. Your support came in time. Otherwise, if their ground forces react and reorganize their attack, it will be difficult for us to escape. This is indeed a matter of time." Difference, and Chen Chen is not deliberately complimenting. Cao Min was very clear about this, so he felt more comfortable. What is the demeanor of a great general? What is rewarding according to merit? This is it. So, he answered without any pretense. The main credit still goes to the commander. We just did our job well. It's good enough that you can do your part well. I will have a good chat with Brigade Commander, when the time comes. Thank you, sir. Cao Min heard the hidden meaning of Chen Chen's words, and the ecstasy on his face was not concealed. Just as they were discussing the distribution of benefits of this operation, there was a sudden knock on the door of the ward. Cao Min looked at Chen Chen, and Chen Chen shouted loudly, "Come in." He thought that the people coming would be doctors, nurses, or other staff, but unexpectedly, the person who came in was Yibang Xiong. A brigade commander knocking on the door? Chao Min immediately stood up and greeted him respectfully. He Bongxiong waved his hand to signal him not to say anything more and walked to Chen Chen and sat down. He picked up an apple beside him and made the same move as his adjutant Zhu Qixing. Peel. But his expression was much kinder than Zhu Qixing's that day. Or should I say, much more sincere. Brother, things have basically been sorted out. You made a really big noise this time. The explosion on the river was reported not only by us, but also by international news. There are a lot of speculations from all sides right now, and the momentum is very strong. It is estimated that it will not be suppressed in a short time. But don't worry, at least in Mengbin, you are safe. Of course, if you say you want to go back, I can also arrange a car to take you back via Dabong. It just so happens that your ship is also parked near Dabong, so we can drive to Munka together. He Bongxiong said, your ship instead of our ship, which made Chen Chen very satisfied. After fighting such a fierce battle, if the ship we got back is really confiscated by him as evidence, then my next target will probably be him. After thinking for a moment, Chen Chen replied, then I'll trouble brigade commander he to make the arrangements. Our people still have to return to Munka. The situation in Mengbin has been tense recently, and we are not willing to take any more risks. Yes. He Bongxiong had already peeled the apple. He then skillfully cut the flesh into several portions and gently placed them on the table beside him. I'll prepare the boat and the money for you. To show my personal sincerity, I will add another $500,000 to the original compensation as compensation for several wounded soldiers and pensions for the brothers who unfortunately died in battle. However, we may still need to discuss the subsequent distribution. As he spoke, he picked up a piece of apple and stuffed it into his mouth. The ward fell into a brief silence. Boring advertisements were playing on TV, and he Bongxiong's chewing sounds were particularly obvious. Which one do you mean mainly? Chen Chen asked. The 505th Brigade is already compromised. We will reunite and prepare to take over Jingdong. It won't be short, but isn't this something I need to be involved in? Chen Chen asked in confusion. From what he Bongxiong said, he should also share in the benefits brought about by the civil unrest in southern Shan State, right? But the problem is I don't even plan to do it. What a joke. If you can't wait to get deeply involved in a large-scale conflict before your strength is grown, then you really think you're living too long. Do you overestimate me? Do I look like I could get involved in such a large-scale operation right now? I just beat up a drug dealer and killed some of their people. Although it's indeed a bit much. But your misunderstanding of me is really deep. After hearing Chen Chen's words, he Bongxiong's hand that was picking up the second apple stopped in the air. He looked at Chen Chen in astonishment and asked, you won't be participating in the follow-up? I'm not going to participate. I have other things to do. Chen Chen answered decisively. Now he really had no interest in the warlords fighting, because he had already planned everything that should be done for the Dongfeng Corps during the rest period. The war must continue, but why rush it? And why do we have to go to the battlefield right away? Did the Americans make their money from fighting? They made their money by selling supplies and equipment while others were fighting. Chai Sri wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make a fortune. But couldn't he make a fortune himself? The chaotic situation that we have created with great difficulty must not be wasted. As long as there is no conflict of interest between the two parties, they can make money together, build high walls, store up food, and slowly become king. Part of the wall has been built, and it's time to stock up on food and guns. Looking at Chen Chen's determined expression, he Bongxiong suddenly felt a little at a loss. He put down the apple awkwardly, looking embarrassed. At this moment, he felt that his vision was really small. Before coming here, I was still thinking about how I could lower the price if the Dongfeng Corps wanted to interfere in the subsequent distribution of benefits, or even how I could kick them out if necessary. But now, people don't care at all. There are other things to do. Just this simple sentence is enough to explain the problem. What he wants is probably not the same as what I pursue. After a few seconds of silence, he Bongxiong regained his composure and continued to ask, so are you going to take a break for a while? Yes, there's so many wounded, we have to rest and recuperate. Why, Commander He, do you have a new mission? No. Your recovery is more important. He Bongxiong immediately waved his hand and then said, in that case, there is nothing to say. All the spoils we collected will be sent to Munka later. Just take a good rest. When we get to Munka, the equipment will arrive soon. In one night, we traveled hundreds of kilometers, fought 3 battles, and killed nearly 300 enemies. Can you imagine? This was done by just a team of 10 people. And after the fight, the casualties in their group were only 4 people. But of course, this is also a 40% combat loss. But no matter from which angle, such a record can be regarded as terrible. In Munka, in a suite of the Vientiane Hotel, Bao Xiaomei reported on the phone the situation she had just learned. Of course, she didn't need to say it. The man on the other end of the phone was also very clear about it. Because all major television stations in northern Myanmar were in an uproar over this series of events. More happened in one night than in the past year. What's even more terrifying is that all of this was caused by one person. The intensity wasn't this high during the Great War. The strongest example I've ever heard of a small force defeating a large one was a few hundred versus 1,000, with a 1-to-2 casualty ratio. And now, 10 versus 200, 10 versus 300, the casualty ratio is close to an astonishing 1-to-100. Admittedly, these casualties are inflated in a sense. After all, a speculative oil tanker explosion killed nearly 150 people. But can you say that they are not strong? To be able to implement such an opportunistic thing is not a manifestation of tactics, combat power, and fighting will. Therefore, the man was also very convinced, and he was extremely supportive of his daughter's judgment and decision. After Bao Xiaomei finally finished her report, he said, I approve of your judgment, and I agree with your decision. Dad has fought in battles all his life, but this is the first time I've seen such a strong team. Although they are small in number, They are fully qualified to compete with several major forces in the surrounding areas. So, winning over is a must. But you still need to think carefully about how you do it. It's impossible for someone like him to be trapped by emotions. Don't think you can get him by sleeping with him. Benefits, only benefits. Think about it carefully. You are in Myanmar and you know the situation better. I will not interfere. But I hope that next time, when you call me to report, he will stand by your side. Okay, Dad. Bao Xiaomei hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. There was a complex expression on her face, including expectation, confusion, secret joy, and disappointment. At the beginning, she did regard this man as an ordinary mercenary. Even if you truly understand his fierce character and fierce methods, you will still only think of him as a sharp knife. However, as the intelligence of this war was transmitted back, she suddenly realized that she was wrong. A shipwreck is not a sharp knife because no matter how sharp a knife is, it can be held in one hand. But he can't. Even if you try your best, he will break free from your fingers and rush in a direction that no one can predict. How can one win over such a person and control him? This question was also put before the Chen family. They tried it, but it was all gone. He Bongxiong of the 756th Brigade probably thought so too. But the sinking ship completely deviated from his plan and demonstrated its attitude of keeping strangers away with its unparalleled brutal strength. Perhaps the only one who was somewhat successful was Chesley, but they were just cooperating, not controlling. It's very difficult. But fortunately, I had planted a hook in advance. Things in Bada Brown are over. A 10-man team from the Dongfeng Corps has successfully intercepted and killed the armed drug dealers and is returning to Myanmar. I must seize this opportunity no matter what and get closer to the Dongfeng Corps. As for how to do it, it's very simple. Just turn a one-time task into a long-term task. It is impossible not to be tempted by a business that brings in stable income. As long as he is interested, then things will be very easy to do. Bao Xiaomei showed a satisfied smile on her face. She drew the curtains and took off all her clothes. Her flawless skin was exposed to the air, which gave her a sense of unrestrained excitement. The fluff on the floor gently scratched her feet. She curled her toes slightly and stepped on the cold ground. A momentary shudder made her unable to hold back a low moan. But when her entire body was immersed in the bathtub, her muscles went limp again. Lift your legs, bend them slightly, and place them on the edge of the bathtub. Bao Xiaomei's face slowly turned red due to the steam rising from the heat, and the sound of water from the shower head gradually became louder. A few days later, Chen Chen handled all the aftermath matters of Mengbin. Under the arrangement of Yi Bongxiong, all the people of the Dongfeng Corps got on the ambulance bound for Myanmar. Due to the tense situation in Jingdong, they had to take a small road through Dabong. The road surface was not very flat, so the car was not moving very fast. The two seriously injured soldiers, of course, each occupied an ambulance, while the other lightly injured soldiers took the Paramount Predator that had already returned to Mengbin. As for Chen Chen, Yi Bongxiong arranged for him to be escorted by his own bulletproof Toyota Land Cruiser. However, he was not the only one in the car. No one knew whether he had guessed the situation wrong or had ulterior motives, but before leaving, Yi Bongxiong stuffed Jia into the car and let her sit with Chen Chen. Chen Chen did not refuse, but immediately closed the privacy panel after she got in the car, intending to solve all the problems in the car. You survived? And then what? Chen Chen asked. Then maybe we should do something to celebrate first? You know, this is a very bumpy trail. Perfect for doing something equally bumpy. Ga Yaozi's face was full of charm. Perhaps the recent rest had allowed her to recover. At this moment, she looked much more radiant than when Chen Chen first saw her. The typical Nordic-style skeleton, coupled with the face that conforms to the Oriental aesthetic, reminded Chen Chen of a female star with the same name named Ga Yaozi. Of course, she must be good-looking, otherwise she would not have been locked up in Wan and I camp for so long. However, Chen Chen was still not interested in her. It's not because I think she's dirty or she's fallen, but simply because of one word: not safe. Her mind is too deep, and the depth and breadth of her plans are almost on par with mine. If such a character is allowed to develop freely, it may very well become a hidden danger to his future. So, when faced with Jia Ya's kindness, his only response was a cold face. When I'm talking to you about serious matters, you'd better treat me with a serious attitude. Otherwise, our conversation can end now. After confirming with the jackal, I will have someone get rid of you. You won't. Jia blinked and continued. You are not a truly cold-hearted person. You are just too rational. Right now, the relationship between our two sides is at a fragile balance point. You have completed your mission. I am no longer of any use to you. But because of Chesley in Thailand, you can't abandon me. That's why you said confirm with the jackal. Because whether to kill me or not was based on your rational judgment without any emotion. But like I said, I'll give you an offer you can't refuse. Now, don't you want to hear the reason? Certainly. Chen Chen nodded without hesitation, without any pretense. All has been said, just treat it as a business, and business will not change because of the gender of the partner. Seeing his reaction, Jia also gave up the idea of getting things done in the car right then and there. Instead, she sat up straight and said, actually, the reason is very simple. I'm not planning to make any more deals with you. I've really run out of cards. I saw some things that put me in danger and gave me opportunities. But now, all the advantages have disappeared, and my fate is completely in the hands of the only remaining force that needs to pay attention to my life and death. That is the Thai royal family. But here's the problem. I can't go to Thailand. If I can't go to Thailand, no one can really eliminate my threat. Because northern Myanmar and Myanmar are not truly controlled by Thailand. Even Chesley is just an outsider here. In a sense, their voice is not even as strong as yours right now. So, I can't die. If I die, I will be out of control, because no one can be sure whether I am really dead or not. Living under surveillance and in plain sight of everyone is the only safe option for them. Because it's easy to prove that a person is still alive, but it's very difficult to prove that a person is really dead. That is to say, even if you want to kill me, the jackal won't agree. How about this reason? Can it convince you? Irrefutable. Chen Chen once again felt impressed by Jia's deep thoughts. In fact, she had already survived from the moment the jackal agreed to use her to disrupt the situation in southern Shan State. She accurately grasped everyone's desires and ambitions, catered to everyone's needs, and then used these needs to weave a death-proof armor for herself. She took advantage of everyone. Ironically, looking back, no one was hurt in this taking advantage. The jackal wanted to mess up southern Shan State and then sell a lot of arms, and he did it. Hua State and the 7th Brigade wanted to drive the tiger to devour the wolf, and they did it. He Bongxiong of the 756th Brigade wanted to consolidate the fortress of southern Shan State force. The capitulationist 505 to defect, and then use war to seize greater voice and greater benefits from the Myanmar side, and he also did it. Even if it was me, I made money and welcomed a wave of greater opportunities. So the question was, who was unlucky? It was a drug dealer who absolutely no one would sympathize with, and the capitulationists who colluded with the drug dealers. Oh yes, there are also the Chen family members who made stupid mistakes in this big incident. Geniuses. In this case, if Noah Khan wanted revenge, he shouldn't even look for me, but should look for Jia first. Chen Chen let out a long sigh, and then said, "It's a strong reason, but I want to kill you even more. You have indeed played all your cards, but as long as you are alive, you will continue to draw cards. I don't know what you will do, but anything that is out of control is a risk to me." Hearing this, Jia's face smiled again. "Maybe you can make me suffer in other ways. Enslave me, control me, abuse me, whatever you want. Don't you like this style? Maybe you like something more innocent, and I'm not against that." Chen Chen ignored her. The car moved forward and soon passed Dabong and returned to Mingyang Highway. The road was flat, and the vehicle was moving smoothly. Looking at the scenery passing by outside the window, Chen Chen suddenly said, "You are a very divided person. I remember when I first rescued you from Wan and I's camp. You were very calm, even indifferent. But when we escorted you later, you panicked when faced with a fierce conflict. If Lenny hadn't been watching you, you would have been in big trouble. And now, you have become another person. You even dared to dig up the grave and cut off the corpse's fingers. So are you schizophrenic, or are you acting panicky on purpose?" Zhao was stunned for a moment, then shook her head. "It's not a split. I fear death more than anyone else, and I fear dying meaninglessly even more. A stray bullet could kill me. How could I not panic? You can't possibly understand that kind of fear because you are a soldier yourself. But I'm not. I'm just a conspirator. I shouldn't be on the battlefield. How do you think I was captured by the bandits in Wanhino? I didn't fall into any trap. I just passed through Minka on my way to Zaimengla and was stopped by them. I was so frightened by the sound of gunfire and bullets that I couldn't resist." Her expression was sincere, and she did not hide her weaknesses. "You're not afraid of corpses, but you're afraid of bullets? Will the corpse shoot me? That makes sense." Chen Chen accepted her explanation because it was indeed reasonable. Even a forensic doctor who has handled 10,000 corpses will still be frightened and stiffen when he goes to the battlefield. This is human instinct. It is really impossible for me to judge Jia with such characteristics because it is completely irrelevant. After all, the death of others and your own death are different. Chen Chen fell silent again, and Jia didn't speak either. Just as the car was about to enter Minka, Jia suddenly turned to Chen Chen. She seemed to want to hold Chen Chen's hand, but Chen Chen dodged it swiftly. So she just looked directly into Chen Chen's eyes and said solemnly, "I know you have many prejudices against me. Or rather, you are wary of me. That doesn't matter. I just wanted to tell you that I never meant anything bad to you. Strictly speaking, you saved me 3 times and gave me 3 chances to live. I was just joking about wanting to sleep with you, but if there is a real need someday, I'll pay you back." After arriving in Munka, Jia was sent to the Chaizili camp, needless to say, and after Chen Chen settled the wounded, he immediately began to receive the spoils. Bai Go, who only had a shoulder injury, had undergone a polymer bone transplant, and was wearing a bandage that did not affect his movement, would certainly not miss this event. As soon as he got off the car, he followed Chen Chen happily, together with Li Bang. The 3 of them went to the dock to welcome the fleet coming from Dabong. When they arrived, Jackal and Peng Shuqing, who had received the news, also arrived. The Jackal was still making a fuss. He rushed over, grabbed Chen Chen's shoulders, and asked in an exaggerated tone, "Oh my god, are you okay? I heard the battle report, and I thought you were at least slightly injured, but now it seems... Oh my god, you're a god of war. Tell me, how did you fight?" "No, let's not talk about the explosion on the river. They don't understand. That's the simplest part. It's just the stupidity of Nakam's people. Tell us about the jungle and the last battle. Head-to-head, 10 versus 200. How did you win?" "Details? I want to hear details." Hearing his words, Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "It's not as exaggerated as you think. 10 to 200, it's actually 10 to 100 or 10 to 80. There were 4 ships in total, and one of them became disabled and ran aground, leaving the battlefield. The remaining 3 ships were ambushed by us in the rapids area. There was no room for maneuver. The people on the ships had no way to disembark and deploy. Most of them were just targets. I really don't know why this kind of battle is unwinnable. As long as we suppress the enemy's heavy firepower, the outcome should be a foregone conclusion, right?" Chen Chen was telling the truth. The last battle sounded very mysterious, but he had planned it carefully and taken all unexpected situations into consideration. He attacked in the middle of the battle. In addition, with the suppressive power he exerted during the battle, it was actually not that difficult to fight. He dared to say that if he had not used forest fire to suppress the ground troops and instead given his team more room to maneuver, he might even have won the battle without any casualties. Of course, what seemed ordinary to him was already amazing enough for the Jackal. Perfect plan. You always manage to magnify the little advantage you have infinitely. I really don't know when I will be able to learn this. Maybe I can only learn it one game at a time. Make it a lesson, Shipwreck. What do you want in exchange? Anything will do. You don't know how valuable this jungle waterway ambush is to us. In fact, in the Southeast Asia region, waterway ambush and waterway assault have always been an important subject, but due to the difficulty and high casualty rate, even the special forces of various countries who have been active here for many years have not been able to accumulate much experience. The underwater demolition attack unit that the Jackal served in before his retirement was considered the best among them, but the Jackal had no confidence that they could achieve the same effect as the Dongfeng Corps. It's not that we have no confidence in our combat capability, but that we have no confidence in the choice of battlefield, the deployment of tactics, and the grasp of timing. This is what he really wanted Chen Chen to talk about. However, even if the Jackal wants it, Chen Chen may not give it to him. He spread his hands and replied, "It's fine to make it into a course, but you may not be able to provide what I want." "What do you want?" "Drones. Sunken, if you want a helicopter, I can get it for you, a civilian convertible model. But drones really can't." "Okay, let's talk about it later." Chen Chen did not force it, because he knew that at this point in time in 2010, it would be a pipe dream to want to make a drone. Because now, drones are still the absolute representative of the most advanced technology. In a sense, the value of a small military drone is even higher than that of a ground armored unit. What? You mean DJI? It was only founded in 2006. It will take at least 10 years for it to grow and become stronger, and for it to deify the concepts of drones and unmanned combat. So if the Jackal can't get it, forget it. Just find a way to ask him for something else. After the two had a brief chat, Peng Shuqing also came over. "Congratulations, Shipwreck, you've got a great harvest this time." The Shipwreck chuckled and replied, "I don't have to pay the balance, right? When will the weapon station arrive?" 2 months later. "You really don't want to spend a dime." "What else? I got the equipment by my own skill, but you still want me to pay for it. How can this be justified?" "That I simply cannot refute it. Let's not talk about this. How about this assault boat? Is it useful?" "That's so authentic." Chen Chen gave a thumbs up and did not hesitate to give his praise. Domestic shipyards are really good at this kind of work. The weapon system is stable and reliable, the hull structure is thick and safe, and the maneuverability is slightly weaker, but it is definitely sufficient. Although it certainly cannot clash with the warships of the regular army, it is still a unique and interesting thing among the warlord's armed forces. "Have you ever considered selling it? Someone could pay a lot for it." Peng Shuqing asked tentatively, but before Chen Chen could answer, he immediately added, "Of course, I'm just asking. It doesn't mean you have to take action." Inquiring and bidding are different. The former is a negotiation, while the latter is an order. Peng Shuqing must be speaking on behalf of someone, but since he was asking for a price, it meant that the other party was not actually forcing it. "Definitely not for sale. We need water vehicles." "Clear." Peng Shuqing said no more, and at this time, the fleet began to slowly approach the shore. This time, He Banxiong sent a total of 3 ships. Needless to say, the assault boat that was snatched from Zhao Jiaoyang, the other 2 are cargo ships, the kind that are fully loaded with cargo. Seeing this scene, even Chen Chen was a little stunned. "So much," he said subconsciously. The quartermaster who came down from the ship heard his words and replied with a smile. "Basically all the spoils that can be collected are here, sir. Should we unload the goods or look at the list first?" "Let's unload the cargo first," Chen Chen replied. So all the accompanying personnel took action immediately, and with the help of simple lifting tools in less than 2 hours, all the goods were unloaded at the dock, occupying a large open space. Several people immediately walked forward and began to check the condition of the goods. Among these goods, the most eye-catching are the neatly arranged heavy machine guns. 85 heavy machine guns, 77 heavy machine guns, M2, KORD. The items you captured are quite mixed. However, the bullets are not too mixed. They can be used interchangeably. Indeed, except for the M2, which uses 12.7 by 99mm bullets, the other 3 guns all use 12.7 by 108mm bullets, and they are from the same school and can be used interchangeably. There is actually a classic old rumor on this issue, which is that the American 12.7 can be stuffed into the Russian 12.7 machine gun to shoot, because its bullet is 9mm shorter and can fit into the barrel. The person who said this is really not afraid of being caught off guard. He can't even close the chamber, the firing pin can't even hit the primer, and he can only use a hammer to fire. Next to the heavy machine gun are boxes of special bullets. What Nuakong stockpiled were mainly Russian Steel Corps armor-piercing B-30 bullets and armor-piercing incendiary tracer bullets. In addition, there were M2 armor-piercing bullets for M2 guns and M20 armor-piercing incendiary bullets with red rings and silver marks. The armor-piercing effects of these types of bullets are quite high, and they are more than enough to hit lightly armored units. Chen Chen roughly estimated the number and found that there were about 8,000 bullets, which was really a lot of money. Damn, Nakam is really rich. These things alone are enough to equip a standard battalion. The Jackal said with emotion. He was not talking about the reduced camps under the excellent matching mechanism in northern Myanmar, but the formal regular military camps. Indeed, it feels a bit too much. Chen Chen nodded slightly, then changed the subject. But we can eat as much as we want. From now on, everyone will have a heavy machine gun. That you're exaggerating a bit. Chen Chen smiled and didn't answer. It is of course an exaggeration to say that every person has a heavy machine gun, but the fact is that such a thing is absolutely impossible to sell. Because once you sell it, it will be very difficult to get it again in the future. Buying through a merchant house, regardless of the reaction of various forces, Whether there is stock or not depends on luck. Now that I have it, why worry that I won't be able to use it in the future? Power comes from the barrel of a gun. More is better. Bigger is stronger. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction, skipped the machine gun, and looked at the 3 recoilless guns on the side. Type 78 82mm recoilless gun, equipped with a white light sight and a multi-purpose bracket, and the only ammunition is the extended range armor-piercing projectile. This thing weighs only 35 kilograms and can even be held up for attack in extreme cases. It is a weird equipment like the 107 Fire. It is used on a large scale. In Africa, Asia, and Southeast Asia. It is very effective in attacking light armored units and occasionally old tanks. In the absence of proper cannons, we can consider bringing back some fragmentation grenades and using them as direct fire artillery. It can be said that with these 3 recoilless guns, the Dongfeng Corps' self-defense capability has once again reached a new level. What? You have an armored vehicle? Can you show me one? If you don't have more than 200 millimeters of armor, don't come here to attack. I'll put this thing on the Predator's weapon station in the future, and we can be considered to have a low-end self-propelled artillery. In addition to these main equipment, the rest are ordinary rifles, light machine guns, and ammunition. There's really nothing to see. What Chen Chen regretted most was the helicopter that was completely burned. Once the fire started, the M134 above would be completely ruined. Even if the main structure was still intact, once the circuit system was broken, it would be impossible to repair it in this shabby place in northern Myanmar. What a waste. All the stuff was unloaded and the cargo ship sent by He Bongxiong returned. They couldn't stay too long. After all, they had already informed the 3 forces in Mungka in advance. If they stayed any longer, it might cause unnecessary conflicts. Looking at the pile of things on the ground, Chen Chen couldn't help but feel a little worried. After thinking for a moment, he said, I have to dig a canal from here to the villa. Indeed, it is possible. The distance is not too far, about 400 meters. Now that you have a boat, you do need a waterway. Jackal immediately agreed. And then the two of them looked at Peng Shuqing together. Then I'll negotiate with Brigade Commander He. It won't be a big problem. Peng Shuqing said helplessly. After all the equipment was received, Chen Chen still followed the old rules and gave the unwanted equipment to Peng Shuqing, and then returned to the villa with Jackal and the others. After sitting on the sofa, the first thing Jackal said was about Jia. What are you going to do with that woman? Hearing this, Chen Chen said without hesitation, don't deal with it. This is your business. She no longer has any connection with the Dongfeng Corps. I thought she would make me another deal, but she didn't, so that was the end of it. She and I are not enemies. She has never plotted against me. She just went with the flow. But of course, if you need to take her out, I have no problem with that. I would like to do it. The Jackal shook his head and continued. She is truly someone who can quickly adapt to this land. Use all your advantages to achieve your goals and survive from death. In a way, she's a lot like you. However, the more this happens, the greater the threat she poses to us. We have no guarantee that she will not turn to our enemies in the future, and if that happens, we will have to face huge troubles. That's right. Chen Chen nodded in agreement, and then said, what's more troublesome is that you have absolutely no control over her. You can't restrain her with anything. If she was just a vase, if she was just a mindless tool, it would be much more convenient. But how could it be so simple for a woman to stand on the stage in this land? She's like this, and Bao Xiaomei is actually like this too, so killing is the best option. The Jackal answered. I never said that. Chen Chen denied. I am a mercenary, not a congenital killer. What I pursue is to solve problems efficiently, but I will never enjoy the pleasure of killing. And now, she is not, and has not shown any signs of causing me trouble. If I want to kill her, do I have to kill Linny as well? Or should I kill you as well? The dog on the roadside looked at me. So should I kill it too? There are a lot of things I don't like, including Jia, but that's no reason to destroy. There is only one reason for destruction, and that is to bring new benefits. Really? The Jackal nodded and suddenly laughed again. However, I do have a way to solve all our problems at once. Do you want to hear it? Chen Chen rolled his eyes. Give me 10 sets of 4-eye night vision goggles, and I'll listen to you. Are you kidding? I'm the one solving your problem now. But I don't want to listen. I won't listen even if you beg me. Give me the equipment, and I will listen. Fuck you. The two began a confrontation. After a long time, the Jackal was finally defeated. Don't be ridiculous. Seriously. I really have a solution for a problem. How to solve it? Send her to the north. Although we don't have an office there, we have a subsidiary company that can keep an eye on her. You really are like a retard sometimes. Chen Chen sighed, but then said, but your idea does give me an idea. What idea? She's the CIA. What bullshit are you talking about? The Jackal was stunned. What's wrong with that? She looks like the CIA, she does things like the CIA, she talks like the CIA, so she is the CIA. A CIA agent appeared in northern Myanmar and was caught by you. Isn't it worth it for Thailand to send someone to take her away under pressure? As long as she's taken away, what does it have to do with us? In this way, you can not only avoid offending the royal family, but also get rid of the hot potato. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone, isn't it? Even Myanmar will cooperate, because they can't afford to offend. The Jackal was stunned. After a long while, he finally spoke. You, my friend, are a wreck. You are a true fucking genius. It doesn't really take much evidence to treat Jia as a CIA agent. In the final analysis, it's just a matter of a word from the Jackal. If they could still treat Jia as an ordinary Western journalist when they first rescued her, then as the truth of the matter was revealed step by step, and as Jia's methods were gradually revealed to everyone, even if she was not, she would have to be. The reason is simple. But when a person demonstrates abilities far beyond her status, it is bound to arouse everyone's suspicion. Just like Chen Chen, he is actually just an ordinary orphan in this life. But only when he admits that he is from the north will everyone think it is reasonable and stop their endless investigation of him. The same goes for Jia. No matter from which angle she considers it, she can only accept the result with a pinch of her nose. But of course, this did her no harm. It could even be considered a way out. After all, in Southeast Asia, no country dares to kill a CIA agent who reveals his identity without going through the United States, so the matter was settled. Jackal immediately returned to the Chasely camp to discuss the specific implementation details with Jia. Chen Chen had not originally planned to participate, but he happened to be going to the camp to see the progress of Lin He's training, so he simply followed him. The entire communication did not take much time, and after hearing that she suddenly had a new identity, the expression on Jia's face was truly wonderful. But of course, she also understood that this was the only solution that could completely eliminate her threat to other forces while giving herself a chance to survive. So, the plan was naturally finalized and handed over to both Chasely and Jia to handle. Chen Chen turned around without any reluctance, not noticing the complicated look in Ga Yaozi's eyes behind him. After leaving the barracks where Ga Yaozi was imprisoned, Chen Chen found Lin, he who was shooting at the shooting range. The latter didn't notice his arrival at all, but just fired bullets steadily at the target paper one by one. The instructor at the side kept giving praises and compliments. He could only say good or great, but his expression didn't seem to be faking it. At first, Chen Chen really thought that Lin he was gifted, but when he got closer to take a look, his brows involuntarily frowned. After 10 consecutive shots, he only scored 40 rings on the 100-meter target. Yes, every shot hit the target, but so what? He was not a rookie. He had been doing high-intensity shooting training for nearly 2 weeks since he left the squad. Jackal said that he fired hundreds of rounds a day, if not 1,000. And he could only shoot at this level? Chen Chen frowned, patted Lin He on the shoulder, and motioned him to stand up. Lin He looked back and immediately smiled happily. Captain, are you back? Back? What's going on? Chen Chen's face was serious. Lin He was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously, what's going on? Target shooting? What's going on? After a week of practice, you can't even get a passing score at the 100-meter target? Looking at Chen Chen's expression, Lin He suddenly felt a little panicked. Is it bad to shoot more than 40 rings in the 100-meter target? But the instructor clearly said that I shot okay. Moreover, based on my understanding of those soldiers, aren't they considered experts as long as they can hit someone? After all, not everyone is a genius like the captain, and I have never thought about working hard in that direction. Is it not okay for me to fight? Chen Chen took a deep breath. He suddenly realized that the young man in front of him really had no idea what the so-called high standard meant. Yes, he had witnessed the battles of the Dongfeng Corps and had definitely seen his level of one shot, one life, but the problem was he had no idea how that was achieved, nor did he know what standards he needed to reach in static shooting in order to perform at that level on the battlefield. He must take a good look and use the most intuitive example to tell him what real shooting is. Without any extra nonsense, Chen Chen snatched the gun from his hand. Then he dived down in a crouching position, with the butt of the gun against his shoulder, forming a straight line between the 3 points, and fired without intention. Bang, 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 bang. After firing 10 bullets in succession, Chen Chen put down his gun confidently. However, when he raised the target scope, he froze in place. What the hell? Not even 70 rounds? What's going on? He immediately removed the magazine, pulled the bolt repeatedly to empty the chamber, and then raised the gun to check. The sight is fine, the bullet is fine, and the gun alignment is fine. But why can't I hit it accurately? Chen Chen couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He could only disassemble the gun to see if there was something wrong with the receiver structure. But after he looked around, he didn't find anything wrong. Could it be that Chen Chen raised the gun barrel and looked inside towards the light? Really? The fucking rifling is almost worn out. Many people, when talking about a rifle, actually don't realize the importance of the barrel rifling. In their view, it is just a conceptual thing. But in fact, this thing can be said to be the most important part of the entire gun. Just because of the problem of mismatch between bullet and rifling twist, the bullet may fly all over the place, or even rotate sideways after leaving the barrel. Some plots in movies and TV dramas like to describe details like a genius shooter grinding his own bullets or sharpening the warheads with a file. In fact, this really exposes the stupidity of the screenwriter. This is the case with details like pitch matching, not to mention if the rifling is severely worn. The rifled gun will be directly transformed into a smoothbore gun, and even the chance of explosion will increase greatly, which means the lethality will be +5, the accuracy will be -10, and the damage rate will be +10,086. And now, this is the situation with the gun in Lin He's hand. No wonder he couldn't hit the target even after firing so many bullets. It would be a miracle if he could shoot accurately. Theoretically, he should be getting less and less accurate. But what's even more stupid is that the instructor in Chasely didn't notice the problem. Chen Chen stuffed the barrel into his hand, and the latter immediately understood why Chen Chen was angry, and stammered to explain, "Sir, I didn't expect that. I thought he was fighting well." Chen Chen ignored him and took out a new Type 81 rifle from the gun cabinet nearby and handed it to Lin He. The latter took the gun, loaded it, and took aim in one go. It wasn't too fast, but he was already quite skilled. This is what high-intensity training should produce. Chen Chen stared at the target scope after firing 10 rounds in a row. After Lin He finished shooting, the instructor next to him couldn't help but exclaimed, "Marvelous! It's really great for a newcomer to be able to play at this level." Chen Chen rolled his eyes. What's so great about it? Only 80 rings. If he is really a newbie who has just started to play with guns, this result is very good and is close to the level of gifted talent. But now Lin He has already fired thousands of bullets. If you can't even hit the prone 100-meter target to this level, then just go home and feed the pigs. After seeing his true level, Lenny could hardly conceal the surprise on his face. Captain, can I hit the target? Chen Chen nodded slightly and said, it's an okay fight, but not enough. You have to remember that gunmen are fed by bullets. A dog can learn to drive a car. If you tie a border collie to a gun and let it learn to shoot, it won't be difficult to hit the target every time after firing 10,000 rounds. You are this border collie who has learned to shoot. Your talent is not much higher than anyone else's, so you must continue to train and work hard. On the battlefield, being almost is not enough. You have to do your best to survive. Clear. Lenny nodded solemnly and then asked, Captain, should I continue to fight? Forget it today. Come back with me. I need to understand your training progress first. I need to make some changes to the following subjects. The plan Chen Chen made for Lin he was exactly the same as Li Bang's, except that it included more basic training and no combat and coordination training. At the same time, he also removed special subjects such as the high-intensity bombing training that was only applicable to the Li Gang, and replaced them with lurking and concealed training. Now that 2 weeks have passed, you should have practiced enough and can proceed to advanced training. So, the two of them left the camp and got on the Hilux brought by the former Lion Corps and returned to the villa de Lenny drove the car. In 2 weeks, he has grown from a rookie who held on to the handrail tightly and dared not let go, to an impatient new driver who stepped on the accelerator and swung the steering wheel in a big circle as soon as he got in the car. However, his operation was still very unskilled, mainly manifested in the fact that he repeatedly adjusted the direction too frequently and at too fast a speed, which made Chen Chen feel a little dizzy. Who taught you to drive? Chen Chen couldn't help but ask. The instructor taught me how to use the clutch, brake, and shift gears, and then I practiced the rest on my own. You have so many training subjects a day. Do you still have time to learn how to drive? Chen Chen was originally going to teach Lin his special driving in the advanced course, but now it seems that he has actually practiced it himself. It's good to practice at night. The campground is large, and you can drive freely. By the way, Captain, I have finished half of the first grade curriculum and can now understand some simple texts. Awesome. Chen Chen said sincerely. The cultural atmosphere and social organization form in Myanmar are closer to Wa State, or to put it bluntly, closer to the north. There are basically 2 types of textbooks they use, either the official textbooks of Myanmar or the textbooks of the People's Education Press in the north. Lenny obviously studied the latter. In fact, it is still quite difficult for a standard illiterate person to get started with that textbook, especially in the absence of a good teacher to guide him. Now Lenny said that he has learned half of it, which is an amazing speed. So how many hours do you sleep every day? Chen Chen continued to ask. 3 or 4 hours. I don't know. I haven't calculated it. If you are too sleepy, go to sleep. I will get up when others get up. Looking at Lin he's in different expression, Chen Chen nodded silently. Perhaps it was because he was indeed full of energy at this age. Coupled with the nutritious meals, there were not many signs of fatigue on Lin he's face. But Chen Chen also knew that the intensity of his training and study in these 2 weeks had definitely exceeded that of the Devil Week. Training during the day and studying at night, the double pressure of mental and physical stress is definitely not something that ordinary people can endure. And he could do it. No matter what his talent is, as long as he has the determination, he will definitely be able to survive in this land. It seems that he has listened to what I said to him last time. Chen Chen couldn't help but feel happy. What is the most important thing in the 21st century? What a talented person. Being able to recruit a real talent is more cost-effective than any equipment. In just over 10 minutes, Lenny drove the car back to the villa at full speed. When entering the house, because his driving skills were not proficient enough, he directly crashed into the flower pot at the door and smashed it. However, Chen Chen did not care. He took him out of the car and walked into the villa. But when the two of them entered the room, they saw the living room was full of people. Sang Yi, who led the team to Mengyang to carry out the mission, is back. As soon as he saw Chen Chen, Sang Yi immediately came forward, bowed his head respectfully, and said, Captain, Mengyang's mission is over. The commission of $100,000 has been handed over to the finance department and is waiting for you to distribute it. Completely different from his previous rebelliousness. At this time, even without the white dog's restraint, Sang Yi stood in front of Chen Chen as obedient as a little chick. There's no way. The gap is too big. If Mengyang still felt a little proud and thought he could use this achievement to gain respect and get a foothold in front of Chen Chen, when the team wiped out the drug dealers with ease and walked out of the jungle with the spoils, then when he heard about Chen Chen's achievement, his pitiful pride was completely shattered. There are 2 teams, each with 10 people. We were terrified when fighting with 20 people on our side, and we narrowly avoided any casualties in the battle. But what about the regiment commander? The least intense battle, the raid on Regina Golf Course, was enough to crush his team to the ground. More importantly, the moment I returned to Mungka and the base, I was almost blinded by the amount of spoils in front of me. 10 heavy machine guns, 3 recoilless guns, and an assault boat. It is said that there was another helicopter, but it was burned and not brought back. What does this mean? Even if we ignore the scarcity of equipment and only consider the selling value, one battle can earn other mercenary groups several years' worth of revenue. What kind of monster is this? If you can follow this kind of monster, even the smoke from your ancestors' graves will turn into smoke bombs. Why are you still trying to pick a fight with him? Almost crazy. Not convinced? Those who disobey me will die, and stop pouring water on my ancestors' graves. So, in just 2 short weeks, Sang Yi went from being a thorn in the side to being a bootlicker. He didn't care what others thought. He just knew that he had chosen this leader. Chen Chen was also very satisfied with his reaction. No matter what his mental journey was, as long as he was obedient, that was enough. Just take your people to the finance department to collect your commission. According to the rules, you can also get a basic share of the Dakali mission. It's not much, about $2,000 per person on average. Take it all. In fact, the calculation of the commission for these two tasks is a bit complicated, because it is impossible for the 1.6 million commission from Munka to be used to pay the selling price of the plunder. Therefore, after deducting the operating expenses, the total commission available for distribution in the Dakali mission is about 1.2 million US dollars, with the participants taking the bulk of the money, and the remaining tens of thousands of US dollars will be distributed to everyone according to the rank standards. Very fair and reasonable. But after hearing these words, everyone's eyes, including Sang Ye's, lit up. For the first time, they felt the benefits of professional operations. $2,000 is really not a lot, but it gave them a great sense of security. This sense of security is even stronger than that brought by the pension. Now, everyone was completely convinced. Understood, Captain? Thank you, Captain. Everyone shouted loudly, and Chen Chen waved his hand to signal them to disperse, then took Lin He to the sofa and sat down. He was planning to have a good chat with Lin He about the training plan, but before he could open his mouth, the arrival of a person interrupted his conversation again. Bao Xiaomei. The woman was as radiant as ever. She walked over to sit opposite Chen Chen and said with a sweet smile, "Mr. Chen Chuan, long time no see." "Only 2 weeks." Chen Chen answered politely. "It's been a long time for me, don't talk about it. I have a big deal here, are you interested?" Li Bang and Bai Go stood aside to guard, while Lin He returned to his room to continue studying his first-grade elementary school course. Looking at Bao Xiaomei in front of him, Chen Chen asked, "What business?" Bao Xiaomei pretended to cross her legs, leaned forward and supported her face with her hands, then lowered her voice and said, "Do you want to know the truth about what happened in Dakali?" Her movements were full of temptation, and her deliberately lowered voice was hinting at Chen Chen to get closer to her. Coupled with her soft eyes, she thought that even the coldest person would not refuse her invitation at this moment. However, Chen Chen was not moved at all, and just replied, "Speak louder. There are no outsiders here." "Not romantic." Bao Xiaomei frowned slightly and continued helplessly. "If you want to understand everything, you must start with the recent major events in the Golden Triangle. But to save time, I will only talk about the key information that you care about. First, the cause of this series of events, in simple terms, is a transaction between drug dealers and the 505th Brigade in Southern Shan State, a new type of drug equipment transaction. Secondly, there are many details involved in this incident, and each detail may lead to multiple different forces being involved, which has led to the previous complicated situation. Third, all the derivative events mentioned above happened because of the details that the 756th Brigade, the 505th Brigade, and Thailand were concerned about. You were only involved in them as a mission. But the next detail I'm going to talk about will definitely concern you because it is highly relevant to your future. On the surface, the core of this transaction is that Southern Shan State lacks advanced equipment, and Nakam happened to get the equipment from Laos. But in fact, the real core is that the drug control situation has been tightened, the policy of alternative planting has been promoted, and the income of many forces in the Golden Triangle has declined. Therefore, they have to try to replace traditional drugs with new drugs in order to pursue higher profits. Do you know what this means? Hearing this, a hint of surprise flashed across Chen Chen's eyes involuntarily. Such a big situation is really not something that ordinary people can deduce, especially the aspect of new drug substitution. Even in the north, it took a considerable period of conflict and attack before the main line was gradually found. The fact that Bao Xiaomei was so confident meant that she did have a grasp of the more in-depth details. It was even possible that she had received some unusual signals. After a few seconds of silence, Chen Chen replied, "This means that the drug trade will begin to decentralize, making it more difficult to combat, and countries will try to introduce new forces. This is a very basic judgment. Chemical drugs are different from traditional cultivated drugs. They do not require a large area or a lot of manpower. Even a small workshop can produce enough drugs to supply an entire country. How did Breaking Bad come about? Their first batch of drugs was made in a fucking RV. In this case, the national level strikes have little effect. They will move to another place after each shot, or even change a group of people and equipment. What can you do? As long as the demand continues and the delivery routes continue, this thing will definitely be produced continuously. Therefore, only by relying on local forces, relying on those cheap, sufficient, and widespread armed forces, can we achieve effective strike objectives." "That's right." Bao Xiaomei nodded happily, and then continued. "So where will the new power come from? Warlords? The Burmese army? Mercenaries? Specialized PMCs? That's right. So this is the crux of the problem. How to obtain the drug enforcement tasks outsourced by various countries. You can't because you're an undocumented person, but I can. I can help you set up a real company and give you the opportunity to sign a contract with the government. How about this kind of business? Are you interested?" To be honest, when Bao Xiaomei made this suggestion, Chen Chen was indeed moved for a few seconds. The reason is simple. This type of mission is definitely not just about money. Rather, it is the key that enables him to truly stand firm morally, to get rid of his warlord identity after getting rid of his mercenary identity, and to become one of our own. In a word, being born in northern Myanmar is original sin. No matter how big you grow, how many victories you achieve, or how much power you possess, as long as you grow up from this land, you are naturally burdened with the negative buff of original sin and will never be truly recognized. If you want to wash off such a buff, you have to pay a tribute. That's why Bao Xiaomei said it's about the future, because she had already seen that Chen Chen's ambition was definitely not just to become a warlord. Although, this was already a height that many people could never reach in their lifetime. But Chen Chen soon realized that the other party was not simply coming to give him money. Help you set up a company. That is her company, not Dongfeng Corps' own. This plan is not feasible because once the company is in the hands of the other party, Bao Xiaomei will have a greater say in both its legal existence and subsequent development. If the subsequent cooperative relationship between the two parties breaks down, we will be in a completely passive position. Thinking of this, Chen Chen immediately said, Miss Bao, this is totally unnecessary. As the Dongfeng Corps continues to develop, it will eventually become a formal PMC company. We are not in a rush. Are you worried that I'll control you? Bao Xiaomei showed a meaningful smile on her face, and then without waiting for Chen Chen to answer, she continued, there are many people who want to be controlled by me, but I don't give them this opportunity. However, in this matter, I can guarantee that I will never try to control you. Maybe you should listen to me explain the details about the company. This company will not have any connection with Hua State. It will be established purely in my name and registered in Indonesia in an offshore form. You don't have to worry about anything. I can solve all the problems. That's very polite, but it's unnecessary. Chen Chen said firmly. A hint of disappointment flashed across Bao Xiaomei's face, but she did not give up. I see. I can understand that. Then let's put it on hold for now. But can we still continue our cooperation? Retreat to advance. Chen Chen suddenly realized that this might be Bao Xiaomei's real purpose. What PMC company, what in-depth cooperation in the future, are all just a cover. What Bao Xiaomei really wants is to continue the cooperative relationship. This is a very classic foot-in-the-door effect in the process of communicating with others. First, put forward a condition that is difficult to accept. After the other party refuses, throw out the next level of condition, and the negotiation will become much easier. This woman is also a person who is good at networking and is good at dealing with people. But I have no reason to refuse. Sure. Chen Chen nodded in response. That's great. I have a new mission in hand, and the location is near the Mingyang Reservoir. It's a chemical drug production workshop. It's not difficult to find. The commission is $100,000, but we demand that it be completely destroyed. How about it, Mr. Shipwreck? Are you interested? Northern Myanmar is about to become chaotic, but you can still do something during this last period of calm, right? Indeed. Chen Chen agreed without hesitation, but during the subsequent communication with Bao Xiaomei, his thoughts couldn't help but wander. The opportunities in Northern Myanmar are never limited to Northern Myanmar. The change in the drug control situation is indeed an opportunity that cannot be missed. Perhaps, I need to find a way to solve my identity problem. PMC companies that can move out of Northern Myanmar and onto a bigger stage should also begin to prepare. At the same time, when Chen Chen and Bao Xiaomei were communicating about the so-called drug control work, in the staff dormitory of a mountain primary school far away in Qingsheng, a gloomy man was listening to the reports of his subordinates. Sang Kong and Lian Yi are confirmed dead. Lian Yi's body has been found and is being sent back to Qingsheng. I heard that Sang Kang's body was blown up and thrown into the river. Some people don't even want us to perform a ritual for him. The other party was very decisive and had strong fighting power, but at the same time, they acted without abiding by the rules and only pursued efficiency. It is certain that they do not belong to any official force of any country. Even the Coast Guard in the north would not do such a thing. From the information I have, this should be a group of mercenaries coming from northern Shan State, but I don't know which group they are or where they are located. The person who spoke was Wang Mie, the fourth-rank figure in the Nakam gang. He was originally just a secondary leader in charge of intelligence, or the so-called public relations work, but now that the main figures were being beheaded one after another, he had to stand up and start taking on specific work. Hearing his words, the expression on Nuakong's face became even more terrifying. His muscles twitched nervously for a few times, and his eyes almost narrowed into slits, but suddenly opened them again. When he was caught off guard, he stared at Wang Mie angrily and asked, Is that you? Wang Mie's hair stood on end. He subconsciously took a step back and asked, What do you mean, is it me? What's wrong with me? Did you sell your jumpsuit to Sang Kong? Do you want to get promoted? Nuakong's tone was grim, and his hand had even been placed on the pistol beside him. Wang Mie shook his head in fear, and then said, It's not me. How could it be me? Lian Eli died at the hands of a woman, and Sang Kong wanted to go on his own. Who knew that more than 200 of them could not beat 10 people? What does this have to do with me? I don't want them to die either. It would do me no good if they died. And you know that. Nuakong's eyes did not blink as he slowly raised his gun. But just when Wang Mie thought he was really hopeless, he suddenly laughed. Of course it's not you. You are my most loyal brother. How could you betray me? Relax, relax, we still have a lot to do. Wang Mie let out a long sigh of relief. He had actually witnessed this man's mood swings countless times before. But every time the other party had an attack, he still couldn't adapt. He looked at Nuakong cautiously and said, It's best for us not to do anything else now. We are seriously injured. We need to rest and recuperate for a while no matter what. 300 of our elite troops have died, and none of us can avenge them, so we might as well do business first. The 505th Brigade's belongings have been shipped to Qingsheng. At least we can complete this business first. Once the route is opened and we have money, we can use various methods to find a real murderer and crush them one by one. I can't wait. I can't wait. Nong Kong interrupted him with a roar. This is a shame. This is our shame. Everyone was staring at us, and we were defeated in front of everyone. Who will still believe us? You? Tell me, will you still believe me? I want revenge. I want revenge without delay. I will kill them, kill their entire family, and send their heads in front of everyone, so that those who want to betray me can see what the outcome will be. Now, immediately, prepare everything for me? You don't know who it is? It's simple. There are so many mercenaries in Northern Shan State, but how many of them can fight like this? Start by killing the strongest. Use your connections, and give me the list. My people will set out today. Looking at Nuakong's hysterical actions, Wang Mie's body involuntarily froze in place. After a long silence, he finally spoke. The Dongfeng Corps in Munka, they're the most likely murderers. If you want revenge, start with them. But how? Let my soldiers go. In just a few seconds, Noah Khan calmed down again. Give them the best equipment and go to Myanmar. In 3 days, find the leader of the Dongfeng Corps and kill him. Kill him and tell everyone it was us who did it. Clear. Wang Ye didn't dare to say even one more word and could only nod. Noah Khan on the opposite side has completely regained his sanity. He began, we really need a break. Big changes are happening and we have too much to do. But this is no reason to delay. Our enemies must die, and they must die quickly. So listen to me and kill him. My soldiers are strong. They won't fail. Wang Ye sighed and said nothing. Won't fail? Yes, Noah Khan's private soldiers are indeed very strong. They're an elite team that he has spent a lot of money to train with great difficulty. There are only 20 people, but their equipment and combat qualities can catch up with the first-line special forces of some small countries. If it's just an assassination mission, it doesn't seem like there would be much of a problem. But why was he still so uneasy? The enemy was too strong. That is completely beyond common sense. If everything that happened before was indeed the record of the Dongfeng Corps, then is it really that easy to behead at this time? Give it a try. At this time, Noah Khan had already walked out the door. He stopped a child who was running and playing on the playground, held him in his arms, and took out a candy from his pocket and stuffed it into the child's mouth. In the sunset, this scene looks extremely warm. But Wang Ye knew that it was not sugar. 2 days later, Myanmar, Dongfeng Corps base villa. Chen Chen stood at the door of the villa, explaining his plan one by one to the white dog beside him. As the size increases, our villa will be the main base, so the defense must also keep up. There must be at least 6 machine gun posts to cover all surrounding areas without blind spots. The price of surveillance cameras has dropped. Let's buy 10 of them first to fill in the blind spots. Cut down and burn all the trees, flowers, and grass outside. We want nothing to grow. Aim the recoilless rifle at the vehicle entrance to block the invasion route of light armored vehicles. All windows must be equipped with bulletproof glass, and personnel should avoid approaching windows as much as possible. The waterway should be excavated as soon as possible. The route should bypass the front of the villa, and a hidden dock should be built at the back. Spend some money to buy the highest point in the middle without any shelter, that hilltop, and cut down all the trees on it. What are we going to plant after the trees are cut? Whatever you want to plant, we can just pave the ground with cement and turn it into a basketball court. We can open it to the public for free. It's charity. Towards the city? The only high-rise building that poses a threat to the city is the Myanmar Public Hospital. Put up a billboard in the middle. What kind of advertisement? A public service announcement. Drug abuse is harmful to health. He looked relaxed, and his tone revealed a calmness that indicated he had everything under control. This is indeed the case. After completing a major operation, as the follow-up tasks were not urgent, Chen Chen immediately began to consolidate the Dongfeng Corps' mode according to the plan. In his conception, if a corps wants to survive for a long time, there are 3 main lines of action: security, economy, status. Needless to say, the economy is about constantly making money through various means to support the development and transformation of this corps. Status, or it should be more accurately described as a collection of intangible assets such as politics, diplomacy, public relations, reputation, etc. Such intangible assets ensure that the corps can gain a foothold in a piece of land and also guarantee the legitimacy of its existence. However, improving economic status is a long-term task, and even if Chen Chen wants to do it, he cannot be in a hurry. But security is different. It can be implemented immediately and produce immediate results. Therefore, after the operating expenses were received, Chen Chen immediately began to spend a large amount of money, not just on equipment purchases, but more importantly on upgrading security measures. After all the commissions, pensions were distributed, and the predators' payments were made, he still had 2.3 million in operating expenses. According to the budget, security measures would cost a total of $300,000. It's not too much, but the money is spent wisely, which is a very smart move. All projects were started immediately, and all the people in the Dongfeng Corps except the wounded were called up. The first thing they did was to set fire to the wasteland. Chen Chen was very interested in this matter. Perhaps he still had some naughty genes in his heart. When he was a child, he burned the ridges of the fields. When he grew up, he burned the river islands. Now he started to burn wasteland. The white dog standing next to him looked at the members who were working with interest and said with some emotion, "It has to be you. These soldiers are ambitious. It's fine to let them go to war, but if you let them do these kinds of odd jobs, even paying them may not be of any use. Now you just say one word and they do it in an orderly manner. It really proves the saying that there is always someone who can defeat someone else." Hearing his words, Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "This is not a matter of one thing defeating another. Essentially, it's because your traditional mercenary group model has never considered obedience management. When there is an advantage, they gather together, and when there is no advantage, they disperse. To some extent, this helps to quickly form combat effectiveness, but it does not help to truly form cohesion. And cohesion is the most basic foundation for advancing combat effectiveness. In short, we should organize more activities like this in the future. Don't think that doing office work is useless. The better the office work is, the more united the team is." Go nodded in agreement. He wanted to say something else, but suddenly he saw Shidakai walking out of the villa. The latter's injuries had basically recovered, and the wounds had healed. Now all that was left was rest, stitch removal, and recovery, so there was no need to stay in the hospital anymore, and he moved directly back to the villa. Of course, this was also for the utmost safety considerations. After all, Myanmar Hospital is not a completely controlled area or a green zone, so it is best not for non-essential personnel to be scattered outside. Looking at Shidakai moving step by step, Go said with a hint of sarcasm, "Brother, You can't do the work. Sure, Dakai smiled and shook his head and replied, No, I just want to talk to the captain about something. Then you guys chat. The white dog wanted to leave tactfully, but was stopped by Sure Dakai. It's okay, it's nothing personal. Then he turned to Chen Chen and said, Captain, I asked Li Bang about the details of your operation. I feel that things are not completely over yet. Hearing his words, Chen Chen nodded subconsciously. Sure enough, Sure Dakai, a natural pessimist, once again demonstrated his talent. How could things end so easily? He had defeated Nuakong's elite troops. Given his character, it was actually a miracle that he hadn't retaliated yet. So he asked, Do you also think that Nuakong's reaction is not right? Sure Dakai nodded and replied, Yes, it's too peaceful. Logically speaking, after such a big incident, he couldn't and shouldn't remain calm. For drug dealers like them, reputation is sometimes even more important than actual strength, because only when the reputation is big enough can other suppliers and other partners believe that he is capable of maintaining a trade route and making money for everyone. So, after being frustrated, he must retaliate at the first opportunity, no matter what method he uses. In the most common case, when you return to Mengbin, the revenge should have already begun. But at the time, the 756th Brigade and the Burmese army were in a standoff. They did not dare to take radical actions, nor did they want to blindly get involved in the dispute. This gave you the opportunity to evacuate safely. But no matter what, revenge must continue. So I think we're all going to be in danger for the next period of time. The current security measures are still not enough. We can prevent large-scale attacks, but we cannot prevent infiltration, and assassination. That's the benefit of having a pessimist on the team. People like Sure Dakai are much more sensitive to crises than anyone else. Maybe he can't necessarily come up with an effective solution, but he can definitely reveal all the problems. So, what do you think should be done? Chen Chen asked. In fact, he also has some ways to deal with it, but since Sure Dakai mentioned it, let him talk about it. Maybe he will give himself some surprises? The worst option is to strengthen defense and hold the base. The middle option is to conduct a fishing expedition and take the initiative. The best option is to conduct a fishing expedition. Kill Nakam. Chen Chen responded without hesitation, and the white dog beside him was stunned. What the hell? We just fought a big battle, and it's only been a few days since we returned to the base, okay? Now, you are discussing the next big mission? Killing Nuakong? Is it as easy as you say? He is a real warlord-level force with more than 2,000 armed personnel. Even though he has been seriously injured, it is not difficult for him to organize a team of more than 1,000 people in a short period of time. And now, you actually said you want to kill him? Yes, the Dongfeng Corps had killed Chen Chen before. But the situation back then is different from the situation now, okay? At least the 7th Brigade has a clear location, and the Eastern Corps has achieved one-way transparency in intelligence. But Nuakong? He is hiding in the jungle. You have no way to conduct preliminary reconnaissance. If you want to fight him, you must use a large force to push forward head-on. Just relying on the Dongfeng Corps' small number of people? No matter how you think about it, it's impossible. The two people in front of him didn't seem to feel that what they said was outrageous at all. Their expressions were completely serious, and they were even full of expectation. Wait, your serial number, is it the ranking of reckless people? The more reckless you are, the higher your serial number will be? Then I'd better be the 6th one. He silently looked at the two people who were talking, but the two people didn't notice anything unusual about him. Yes, kill Nuakong. Sure Dakai said firmly. We have already forged a blood feud with Nakam. He will find us sooner or later. Only by killing him can we truly eliminate all risks. As long as he dies, no one will avenge him, because they are a gang formed for profit. Now that the boss is dead, the most important thing is to fight for his position. No one will waste time. But the problem is we don't know how to find him. That's not the biggest problem. Chen Chen shook his head and subconsciously stroked the FN-57 around his waist. It was not too difficult to find Nakam. By this time in 2010, Nakam knew almost all of his hiding places. If it's just launching a surprise attack, it's not that difficult. The real problem is that Nakam is currently using what is probably his safest hiding place. If he wants to launch an assassination, he must also guard against assassinations by others. This is the most basic hypothetical principle. His hiding place was the Xiao Oceanuan Village Primary School, deep in the mountains, surrounded by opium cultivation bases, all filled with his people. The defense is tight, and the core areas are all covered with barbed wire, so it is basically impossible to sneak in. Wait, how do you know this information? The white dog on the side couldn't help but ask, and before Chen Chen could answer, Sure Dakai immediately turned to him. We won't ask questions that we shouldn't ask. The white dog was stunned for a moment, then nodded silently. Sure Dakai said, we won't ask, which means he doesn't know either. Only the wreck knows. Why do I feel like I paid a lot? The background of this group leader is probably more terrifying than I thought. Don't ask questions that you shouldn't ask. He shut his mouth obediently and continued to listen to the conversation between the two. So, we can only fight a battle of siege and annihilation? Sure Dakai continued to ask. That's right. As long as we take action, it will definitely be a tough battle. Chen Chen replied. That's troublesome. Maybe we can use other powers. No one will be willing to do this. We can only rely on ourselves. Of course, maybe we can recruit some cannon fodder. That means we need to upgrade our equipment. Fuel air bombs are not enough. How about napalm bombs? The launcher is a big problem. White phosphorus bombs may be more suitable. What about heavy artillery? Or maybe we can use real poison gas bombs this time. We won't have any humanitarian problems. No one will sympathize with drug dealers. I can't find this thing. It would be great if I had a tactical nuclear bomb. Chen Chen and Sure Dakai walked towards a villa, and their voices gradually faded away. The white dog stood there in a daze, thinking sadly in his heart. It turns out that there is still a pitifully thick barrier between me and them. I have even accepted your ideas and carefully considered how to mobilize all our forces to kill Nakam. But what you guys want is to drop a nuclear bomb on his base. Even if it's just a random, unrealistic fantasy, the difference in the pattern is too damn big. It wasn't until the two people's voices completely disappeared that Go finally came to his senses. He ignored the pain in his shoulder and ran quickly to catch up with Chen Chen, then shouted loudly, "Captain, wait for me. I want to join. I want to be the sixth one." At the same time, in an unnamed hotel in Myanmar City, several men sat together and discussed their plans seriously. The other side acted very cautiously, and their defensive arrangements were almost perfect. There are multiple sentry posts set up within the villa, covering all blind spots. There are 6 heavy machine gun firing points alone, and the number of secret sentries is completely inestimable. If we choose to storm, they will mobilize all their forces to counterattack immediately. With the number of our personnel, we probably won't be able to survive for more than a minute under their firepower. And if they were sneaking in, you saw that they even burned all the vegetation around the villa today. Without cover or shelter, going up there would be a death sentence. To put it another way, even if we don't attack in the villa, the possibility of success is very low if we use the method of tracking and attacking. The leader travels in a mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle. Conventional attack methods are completely ineffective. The only chance is the moment he gets in and out of the vehicle. But every time, he would first observe the external situation and make sure there was no problem before getting out of the car at the smallest exposure angle, and then quickly entering the indoor shelter. The window of exposure during the whole process is only 1 or 2 seconds at most. With such a short time, we really can't carry out a sniper attack. Hearing his words, everyone present showed deep disappointment in their eyes. They originally thought that this assassination mission would be carried out extremely easily and smoothly. After all their previous work had been carried out almost perfectly. The people and basic weapons were in place, and there was no suspicion aroused by the local warlord forces, nor was there any trace revealed that might alert the enemy. Logically speaking, when an assassination mission reaches this stage, the outcome can basically be said to be decided. But here comes the irony. They actually didn't find any opportunity to take action. Their target did nothing, but it seemed that they did everything. He built an invisible high wall around him, blocking all peepers outside. This is a master. At this moment, all the members of the special operations team called Viper from Nakam's team were confused. They vaguely felt that their mission might be in vain, but they also felt that maybe it was not that simple. After a long silence, the team leader finally spoke up. "No matter what, we should at least try. Let's do another reconnaissance tonight. We'll try to create some chaos and see if we can make the other side reveal their weaknesses. If possible, let's just do it. If there really is no flaw at all, then we can only attack by force." 2 targets can be seen inside the villa, and 8 are outside the villa. All of them are hidden in bunkers, so sniping is impossible. Late at night, on a high ground about 800 meters away from the Dongfeng Corps, 2 members of the Viper squad, holding FLIR Recon 3 thermal imaging telescopes, were conducting a new round of reconnaissance around the villa. It has to be said that this team is vastly different from other mercenary groups in this land, in terms of equipment maturity and combat professionalism. They made full use of the equipment at hand and strictly carried out reconnaissance according to standard procedures. The investigators even wore full sets of jungle camouflage uniforms. However, their expertise did not bring much improvement to the situation. After 3 hours of waiting, the sniper and the spotter were numb all over, but they did not wait for even a chance to shoot. Several times, the target person flashed past the window, but the opponent's unpredictable movement trajectory was not enough to support the sniper team to complete the shooting, so they had to continue waiting for their enemy to make the first mistake. The sniper slightly stretched his stiff fingers and said softly, "No wonder this corps was able to wipe out hundreds of Sang Kang's men. Their entire team is so professional, it's a bit scary. The security personnel outside are not their own people. They should be hired from Wanfeng Group in Mungka. Just from the way they stand, it's clear who is better between the 2 groups." Hearing his words, the captain and sighting officer beside him hummed, gently put down the FLIR Recon 3 in his hand, and then adjusted the IN/PVS 14 night vision goggles on his helmet, and then replied, "There's no other team like this in Mungka. Long-range sniping is not feasible. Group 2, what's the situation over there? Can we get in?" A moment later, the captain's earphones contained a response from the assault reconnaissance team. "We can't get in. The enemy has set up 3 recoilless guns in the direction of the main passage. Let alone ordinary pickup trucks, even armored vehicles will be dead. I suggest we retreat and re-prepare our equipment. We can't use light weapons. We have to go to Dabong to get the 19 Malawing Quaches and carry out saturation bombing on the building to force them out of the building, and then carry out sniping." "Understood. Can you determine the enemy's evacuation route? Are there any tunnels?" The captain asked again, and after a moment, the commando scout replied, "There must be a tunnel, but we can't find it. However, judging from the terrain of the villa, the length of their tunnel will not be too long. It is likely to go around to the direction of Mungka Public Hospital. If we launch an assault, we won't have to worry about the tunnels. 2 MK-19s will fire a barrage of bullets, and the assault team will follow up with the assault. The battle can be over in 2 minutes. The only problem is the evacuation route. We can't escape along the main road. We may have to cross the river." Hearing this, the captain finally breathed a sigh of relief. At least we can still attack, so it's not a complete failure. The firepower of 19 Malawing Quaches is no joke. When they got this equipment from Kren before, the other party introduced the power of this equipment to them in person. There are clearly hundreds of militiamen with automatic rifles and rocket launchers in front of them. and there are clearly only a few people and a cannon on their side, but as long as the 19 Malawian Quaches enters the rhythm of continuous shooting, with a firing rate of 60 rounds per minute plus a 48-round ammunition belt, the area within hundreds of meters will become a sea of fire. It only takes a few dozen seconds for all the enemies to disappear. All they left behind were corpses and mutilated wounded. It can be said that no matter how many enemies there are, or how tight their defense is, they will all die in vain in front of 19 Malawian Quaches. Architecture? Do you really think that a building without special bulletproof design can withstand M430 high-explosive bombs? Even if the explosion fails, even if a few bullets get through the window, it will be enough to suffocate all the people inside. And they brought 2 such weapons. If these can't kill them, then the enemies must be gods. As for evacuation, isn't there an assault boat on the other side? Just get on the assault boat and run away. In the wide waterway near Myanmar, no one could catch up with the Zhonglong assault boat. So he said no more, picked up the thermal imaging telescope again, and continued to observe the villa. At this time, all the lights in the villa had been turned off. He could see the heat source leaking from some of the open windows and could even roughly determine the location of living targets. But without long-range killing weapons, he really had no way to launch an attack. It was already 3 a.m. The captain sighed, and after making sure there was no chance of sniping, he decisively gave the order to retreat. Group 2, prepare to retreat. Let's go back to the hotel first. And then, however, at this moment, all his words were stuck in his throat. Because his throat was broken. Almost at the same time, a bunch of blood exploded on the head of the sniper next to him. In the last few seconds before his consciousness faded, he heard a man say in his ear, "Shit, Recon 3, you're so damn fat, but you're already here. Team 2, launch an assault on the northern farmland. They have a reconnaissance team over there. Group 3, sail to Dabong. There are still people left there. Intercept them. Hurry, end the battle within 2 hours. 19 Malawian Quaches. Don't let them get away." The captain's consciousness gradually faded away. He vaguely heard gunshots not far away, but soon he fell into complete darkness. The counterattack against Nguyen Kang's assassination team lasted only a short hour, and the Dongfeng Corps spent 55 minutes of it on the road. In fact, Chen Chen certainly did not have any superpowers to predict the future. What really made the contribution was a piece of equipment that they had obtained and used a long time ago. Thales TRC 4000 radio interception system. In the context of 2010, the radio environment in Myanmar was relatively clean, and each organization had a basically fixed frequency. But when a completely unfamiliar frequency broke into the channel, Bao Qi, who was lying in bed and unable to train and instead continued to strengthen his technical studies, almost immediately discovered the problem. The communication of the Viper team, which did not use frequency-hopping communication, was immediately intercepted. Through their conversation, Chen Chen quickly guessed the opponent's position and quickly set up bait to stabilize the Viper team that was under surveillance. He went directly to Mungka Public Hospital through the secret passage that had been discussed, and then went around to the other side of the river from Nanluo Bridge. He found 2 snipers from the Viper team who were conducting long-range reconnaissance on the high ground where he planned to build a basketball court. The synchronized attack was immediately launched, and the bullets of CS/LS-2 shot and killed the enemy silently. From beginning to end, they did not realize the most crucial point. That is, when they began to use radio communications unscrupulously, the identities of hunter and prey had quietly been exchanged. Not all battles are thrilling. When information and intelligence are completely suppressed, how can there be so much frills? You can't see the enemy, but the enemy can see you. This is even more exaggerated than the perspective cheat, because it is a full map cheat. After killing the enemy, the 2 members of Group 1, where Chen Chen was, immediately returned to support Group 2. However, before they arrived, the members of the Viper squad in the farmland were blocked by crossfire from 4 directions in the middle of the farmland with almost no cover. After confirming that there was no chance of breaking out, the last 2 members surrendered. Chen Chen did not execute them because they were important sources of intelligence. The unarmed killer was taken back to the villa, and an hour and a half later, the assault team heading to Dabong also reported back the victory news. 8-4, 1 person was slightly injured, and all the enemy players left behind were killed. At this moment, all the fighting was completely over. Chen Chen came to the 2 members of the Viper squad kneeling in the middle of the living room and asked, "Did Nguyen Kang send you here?" The 2 team members subconsciously raised their heads and saw the face of the enemy they wanted to kill, but ended up falling into his hands. After a few seconds of silence, one of them answered, "Yes." Very brief, very clear. This is a good signal. At least it shows that the other party's willingness to continue confrontation is not strong. How many people are there in total? 10 people, but if we die, there will be others coming later. This sentence was a threat. Before Chen Chen could answer, the man continued, "We can cooperate. Let us go back. We can report to Nguyen Kang that the mission has been completed. He just wants revenge. He doesn't really want to kill you all. So, if you change your identity, you will never have to worry about anything. Believe me, we are the team he trusts the most. He will definitely trust us." Chen Chen did not answer, but continued to ask, "Is Nguyen Kang in Xiaoshianyuan village?" Hearing this, the 2 kneeling on the ground widened their eyes at the same time. After all, they had never received real anti-interrogation training, and their subconscious reaction at this moment had actually exposed all the information. Therefore, Chen Chen did not waste time, but directly said, "Draw a defense map around Xiaoshianyuan village, and I can spare your lives." After the words were spoken, the living room fell into a silent state. After a long while, the first person on the ground answered, "It's useless. Even if you get the defense map of Xiaoshianyuan village, what's the use? Do you still want to break in? With the few people you have, you can't even get close to the core area of Xiaoshianyuan village. Not to mention you. Even the regular Thai army can't get in. Trust me, you have no other choice but to cooperate with us. You don't have heavy weapons. Even if you get our 19 Malawian Quaches, you can't pose a threat to Nakam. Don't you know? He has a cannon, a real howitzer. Chen Chen smiled and replied, don't worry about that. To draw, or not to draw? Chen Chen's tone left no room for doubt. The man opposite him had a flickering look in his eyes for a few seconds, and suddenly said something that was beyond everyone's expectations. If I draw a defense map, can I join you? I can lead the way. The terrain there is complicated. If there is no one to lead the way, you may not be able to get in even if you have a map. You can trust me. This is the best way for me to go. After the words fell, Chen Chen couldn't help but be stunned for 2 seconds. What the hell is this? If you can't beat them, just join them? But you, as a guide, are a little too decisive, aren't you? Chen Chen would never accept a guide, let alone a drug dealer. But in this situation, you can make good use of the other person's psychology. So he answered, no problem. Draw a defense map, and I'll keep you safe. You swear to the Buddha. The man said seriously. If conditions permit, he certainly won't take it so lightly. But in the current situation, all he could ask for was an illusory oath. However, in this land, the oath sworn to the Buddha still has credibility. At least it is a kind of psychological constraint. In addition, it is indeed beneficial and harmless to let oneself join the team. As long as the other party says it, it can be regarded as indirectly confirming the reliability of the cooperation between the two parties. I swore to the Buddha that if I break my vow, I will be doomed to eternal damnation and will never be able to be reborn. Chen Chen raised his hand and swore without hesitation. The man breathed a sigh of relief, and 10 minutes later, he got the defense map. Chen Chen took a quick look, and after confirming that there were no major problems, he glanced at Li Bang standing beside him. 2 gunshots rang out, and the drug dealer was killed. His eyes were filled with disbelief and confusion, but Chen Chen was almost dying of laughter. Buddha? I believe in Marx. The white dog beside him looked a little unnatural. He hesitated and said, it's not a good idea to swear like that. Before Chen Chen could answer, Li Bang on the side said without any psychological burden, Buddha does not bless drug dealers. Clear. Chen Chen nodded to Li Bang in appreciation. At this moment, his logic was self-consistent. After hearing what Li Bang said, Bai Go suddenly understood. Indeed, how could Buddha bless drug dealers? Under the Shuro account, we eradicate evil and swear a poisonous oath? We are all family members, so we know a little bit. So, his doubts quickly disappeared, and his understanding of the way this core acts was raised to a new level. At the same time, in Xiaoshianyuan village, Noah Kong was sitting on a chair with a large bag of candy spread out on the table. Despite his great anger, his expression was surprisingly calm. All dead? All my people are dead. Wumia didn't dare to answer directly, but just said, we have lost contact with everyone in the Viper squad. From the most optimistic perspective, at least they have encountered a major accident. Maybe not. No casualties, but that's enough. Noah Kong waved his hand and picked up the pistol beside him. They must all be dead. The Dongfeng Corps is the murderer. I'm going to kill them, no matter what method I use. Move Zabo's troops over there, and bring their artillery. Buy off the Burmese army, buy off the 505th Brigade, buy off the 756th Brigade, and let us pass. Money is not a problem. I want to blow them up. Not even one will remain. Blast them all into ashes. These people are simply ridiculously fat. After a battle that was not really a battle, the first thing Chen Chen did was to collect equipment. When all the equipment appeared in front of him, he was almost unbelievable. In the past, he only knew that drug trafficking could make money, but he didn't know that drug trafficking could make money to this extent. To what extent is the equipment of this so-called Viper team luxurious? Needless to say, the full body comes with standard level 4 Dragon Scale armor. 10 night vision equipment alone were delivered, all in /PVS 14. This thing is a single-barreled rifle and is one of the relatively old equipment of the US military. However, old does not mean backward because it is very functional. On the one hand, it can be used as a head-mounted night vision device. On the other hand, it can be removed separately and used as a thermal imaging observation device. If it is equipped with a rail, it can also be used as a gun sight. At this point in 2009, the US military replaced its equipment with new observation systems in large quantities, and a large number of /PVS 14s were leaked, but it was still not easy to get one. At least in terms of price, it definitely could not be a small number. And they were able to take out 10 at a time. Combined with other equipment, there is no doubt that they were most likely from the extremely pro-American Karen state. This was the time when the CIA Asia Center was frequently launching attacks in Southeast Asia, and even the 101st Commando began to grow and develop again. It was self-evident who was supporting them, and it was normal for them to have some American equipment. In addition to portable night vision goggles, the Viper Squad's more conspicuous equipment also includes the FLIR Recon 3 thermal imaging telescope. As a high-performance long-range thermal imaging binocular, Recon 3 uses a large 640 by 480 medium-wave INSB sensor with a fairly high resolution and digital zoom function. It is one of the most commonly used equipment by border forces in various countries. Ironically, a very prominent line in the advertisement of this thing is suitable for drug control operations, but now it is in the hands of drug dealers. In addition to these electronic equipment, the guns used by the other side can also show the richness of this team. The sniper uses an L115A3 sniper rifle, while the observer uses the most classic AWM sniper rifle in shooting games. The price of these two guns alone is enough to buy all the equipment for many small mercenary groups in Myanmar. As for rifles, all 10-man team used M4A1, which is relatively common in this area. What is unusual is that all 10 guns were equipped with optical sights, the same M68 CCO optical sight, and the style was Aimpoint Comp M2 US military standard model. It's really a bit exaggerated. Chen Chen said involuntarily. It's really exaggerated. The white dog echoed in a servile manner, and then continued. But based on my understanding of Nakam's drug dealer gang, this kind of equipment is indeed the style of his elite troops. They are close to Karen State and have an extreme faith in American equipment. If they can get American equipment, they will definitely not want Russian equipment, let alone equipment from the north. But their taste is actually that I always think that the M4 is not easy to use. It's not that I can't afford the M4. There's still some here. I just think the Type 81 is much more useful. Really? Chen Chen nodded slightly and replied. If you don't consider the differences in scalability of sights and accessories, the Type 81 rifle is really no worse than the M4. It's mainly because the stability is too poor. The white dog added, but then said, but I don't know what to say if there is a scope. Should we change our equipment? Chen Chen thought for a moment and finally shook his head. Forget it. Change your ass. Everyone is already used to the Type 81, so let's just use it for now. When there's a chance in the future, I'll either replace all of them with HK416S or see if I can get some AK74S and buy some rail accessories so that these sights can be used. The Warsaw Pact rail and the Picatinny rail commonly used by NATO are two completely different concepts. Sights cannot be used interchangeably on different rails. However, unable to resist the demands of gun enthusiasts, a large number of modified rails dedicated to the AK series of guns have been born on the market. They are all civilian products and are not difficult to buy. It just takes a little more time. In general, the Dongfeng Corps has reaped rich rewards in terms of individual equipment this time. What a pity. Only 10 people came. If there were 20 or 30 of them, the equipment needs of the Dongfeng Corps would be met all at once if they wanted to expand. Nuo Kong is too contemptuous. Who can fight with such a small number of people? At least 10 more people. 10 each. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Li Bang, Bao Qi, and Shi Dakai nodded, while Bai Go was secretly shocked. No way. No one really thought that this Viper squad was weak. It was only because they ran into the hands of the Dongfeng Corps that they were completely wiped out so silently. If their target was not the Dongfeng Corps, but any other mercenary group in Mengka, even the Mu Gue under the Wanfeng group, it would probably cause quite a stir. So what is the problem? Bai Go looked at Chen Chen in confusion and said, I always feel that this battle was fought inexplicably. They just came like this, and then they died like this. From a tactical and technical perspective, they're not weaker than us, but you don't understand this. Bao Qi on the side interrupted Bai Go and then said proudly, this is essentially the suppression of the war system. Although our guns and artillery are not as good as theirs, we are superior in one respect, electronic warfare capability. Look at the Americans attacking Iraq and Iran. Do you think it was really because they had powerful planes and tanks? Wrong. It's because of the strong electronic warfare capability. All radars are blinded. All communications are cut off. Your ground forces have completely lost unified command, and your air defense capabilities are almost non-existent. Isn't that like opening cans one by one? It's the same for us now. Once they come over, our position is exposed. How can we fight them? So, you think our leader is only good at tactics? Oh, I've said it before, his understanding of war is unmatched by anyone here. You know, when we were the poorest, everyone had only a broken Type 81 rifle, and we could earn $10,000 per mission. At that time, we had already obtained a wall-penetrating detector. Later, we had money. According to the thinking of the Turkish warlords, we should have recruited people to buy guns and cannons, right? We didn't. Instead, we bought a radio monitoring system and updated our radio communication equipment, all of which were equipped with frequency hopping functions. In the future, we will also have to implement a light infantry combat joint command system. That's all right. Chen Chen quickly interrupted Bao Qi. To be honest, this feeling of being praised in person is quite amazing. But you can't be too sure. What if you fail to do it? Bao Qi nodded obediently and finally added, most people are standing on the first floor, thinking that the team leader is on the second floor. Those who are a little more knowledgeable think that he is on the third floor, but in fact, he is at the very top. Really? The white dog nodded in agreement, without any hypocrisy on his face. The deeper he got to know Chen Chen, the more he could feel his own shallowness. Perhaps this was the reason why everyone was quickly impressed after getting to know Chen Chen. After all, if someone was a little better than you might be jealous, suspicious, or disgusted. But if he was 18 stories better than you, then you could only admire him. While they were talking, all the individual equipment had been packed up, and the damaged bulletproof vest had been thrown aside. What was left was the highlight of this time. 219 Malawian Quaches automatic howitzers. Each carries 3 ammunition belts for a total of 288 rounds, and 2 modified 11th generation F-150 Raptor pickup trucks. You can tell at a glance that this car is stolen. Nakam's business is quite big. Does he have connections in California? The smuggling of luxury cars is no secret in northern Myanmar. It can even be said that it is a business that everyone knows about, so Bai Go immediately understood what Chen Chen meant. He may not have connections, but he must have connections with people who have connections. Captain, do you want to get a luxury car too? If there's a Dongfeng Warrior or a Hummer, I'm fine with that, but forget about anything else. Chen Chen waved his hand, climbed onto the back of the pickup truck, and began to check the layout of the 19 Malawian Quaches. I have to say that this team is quite professional. The gun is mounted very stably, and the angle adjustment is very smooth. In particular, the space for ejecting shells is separated from the spare ammunition storage area. This can be regarded as a modification that is quite in line with actual combat requirements. Compared with those African militiamen who just drag their guns onto pickup trucks, the difference is obvious. Very good, very good. This thing is very suitable for hitting people. 2 Mk-19s and one gun, no matter who comes, it really doesn't work. Such an expensive thing, they actually only sent so few people to look after it. Chen Chen's tone was a little doubtful. And in fact, he was right. The automatic howitzer was not equipment that a light infantry squad could carry. It was a serious company-level support firepower, usually allocated to light armored assault troops. Hearing his question, Dakai at the side said they didn't think they would be exposed. The two vehicles carrying 19 Malawian Quaches were parked near Dabong. They could attack Minka or retreat to Taping Mingla. If we hadn't intercepted the communication, we would have no chance of catching them. In general, the advantage of information warfare has been demonstrated. Really, Chen Chen took a last look at the two cannons and guessed the origin of the two cannons from the tattered Arabic labels on them. Although this thing is standard equipment, it is exported very widely. Even Pakistan bought a lot of it. The thing in Nakam's hands is probably from the Americas to the Middle East and finally into his hands. How to say it? Thank Pakistan for the food. After counting all the equipment, Chen Chen walked back to the living room of the villa with satisfaction. This is really a wave of gains, and the degree of gains is not inferior to the several battles in Dakali. Sure enough, you have to be selective when looting. What does it mean to be selective over hard work? This is it. And this harvest has further strengthened his determination to fight Nuakong. Putting aside his unwavering desire for revenge and the justice of cracking down on drug dealers, the treasure trove he had accumulated over dozens of years was enough to provide sufficient motive for his death. Nuakong, Nuakong, don't blame me. Who told you to be so rich? If you are rich but unkind, and your virtue is not worthy of your position, you will be beaten to death. This is the rule of this world. The twists and turns of the night ended here, and everyone dispersed to rest. Chen Chen leaned back on the sofa and let out a sigh of relief. Dakai, Bao Qi, Li Bang, and Lin he sat beside him. The Dongfeng Corps gathered again, and now there was an extra white dog. Li Bang seemed to want to say something, but he glanced at the white dog and finally swallowed his words. The white dog noticed his action keenly, and without any hesitation, he immediately said, Captain, everyone, if you have any private matters to discuss, I will go to rest first. But if I get the chance, I hope I can prove myself credible. I will definitely follow you guys from now on. That's not the case. Chen Chen interrupted him and then said, there are some things that only we can know, and they're 100% private. Lenny, go and rest with him. Lenny nodded obediently, and this action completely dispelled the grudge in Bai Go's heart. Understood, Captain. We'll be leaving now. He happily turned around and left with Lin He. After he left, Chen Chen turned to Li Bang and asked, want to fight back? Li Bang hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. We have tasks one after another right now. I'm afraid that if it takes too long, I won't know the situation at home. If something unexpected really happens, at least I want to go back and take a look. No problem. Chen Chen nodded seriously. I've been thinking about this. After killing Nakam, the first thing we have to do is to go to Kokong and bring your family back. But if you want to go, even if we don't consider the issue of confidentiality, all members of the Dongfeng Corps will be dispatched, and you must try your best to be present. Because just recognizing people is quite troublesome. So, wait another 2 weeks, or a month at the latest. We will set off once Bao Qi and Dakai have fully recovered. I'm almost there. Dakai immediately replied. According to the doctor's advice, the stitches can be removed in another week, and I can move around normally in 2 weeks, but I still need some time for recovery training. I'm afraid I can't do it yet. My leg injury is too troublesome. I can recover to normal in a month, but my muscles are severely atrophied now. I will definitely be hindered if I go. Bao Qi's tone was a little frustrated, but he had also learned to consider things from a global perspective. Knowing his own physical condition, it was impossible for him to drag others down. Then describe the key information. You are actually fine, the location is easy to find, but I don't know if I can persuade your family members. Don't worry, my father is not a fool. He won't do anything rash. This is the difference between Bao Qi and Dakai. Bao Qi's family has seen the world, so communication with them is relatively simple and the matter can be carried out without his presence. As for other people, it's not certain. That's settled then. Chen Chen made the decision decisively. After defeating Nakam, Shan State is about to fall into chaos on a large scale. We will take this opportunity to fight back to Kokong and visit our relatives. Good. The three of them answered in unison, and a battle to visit relatives that was bound to happen was decided. The schedule for the family visit was determined, and the action plan against Nakam was immediately accelerated. For Chen Chen, whether to fight or not is not an issue at all. The real issues are three: when to fight, how to fight, and what to use to fight. Regarding the issue of time, it seems that the sooner the better, but in fact it is not the case because the Dongfeng Corps does not have the ability to be deployed or attack at any time, and it takes a certain amount of time to prepare personnel and equipment. A battle can only be won when the level of preparedness reaches or even exceeds the enemy's level of preparedness. Therefore, after comprehensively considering the possible reaction of Nuakong and the time required for subsequent deployment, Chen Chen finally finalized the schedule. 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, we will set out for Qingsheng to complete the preliminary combat preparations and end the battle within 3 days. This time arrangement can be said to be quite radical. After all, unlike the raid on the 7th Brigade camp, this time they need to fight a serious offensive battle. Not to mention how to wipe out an armed force of more than 1,000 people. Reconnaissance and breakthrough alone will take a lot of time. However, difficulty has never been the criterion for Chen Chen to make judgments, but feasibility is. He always believed that as long as something could be done, he could definitely do it. If something was absolutely impossible to do, he would definitely have a chance to do it. This is the tradition of that team, and also the bloodiness he has accumulated from countless battles. Of course, courage alone was not enough. The huge difference in numbers forced Chen Chen to choose the only feasible path, which was to call for external assistance. There was nothing shameful about this. Relying on one's own strength to conquer the whole world is certainly full of heroic romanticism. But this is, after all, a rational, realistic, real world where the magnetic field cannot be controlled. At certain times, you must be open to interacting with others and learn how to cooperate with them. So, early in the morning of the second day after the plan was confirmed, Chen Chen went directly to the Chasely camp and found the jackal, who had just woken up. The latter had just finished answering the phone, and before Chen Chen could speak, he asked first, "So you defeated a special operations team last night? What happened? Was it difficult to fight? Were there any casualties?" The jackal remained as curious as ever about all the battles that took place in this land. However, Chen Chen's answer was as perfunctory as ever. "There's nothing much to say. The monitoring system intercepted their communications. All their actions were exposed under our noses. We could kill them in one encounter. One of us was slightly injured. The M4 bullet penetrated the third-level bulletproof vest, and the fragments caused some superficial scratches, but it's not a big problem." "You always make it sound so light." The jackal frowned in dissatisfaction, then continued, "Do you still want night vision goggles? If you tell me nicely, I can still help you apply for them." "No, we just seized a batch, it's enough." "Are you kidding me?" The jackal was horrified. "GPNVG, 18? For purposes? Not really, and /PVS 14. That's what I said." The jackal breathed a sigh of relief. "How can a common thing like in /PVS 14 compare with our 4-eye night vision device? Don't you know? This thermal imager is actually useless. It is said to be used as a gun sight. But have you ever seen a soldier using it? Isn't the most common one in /PVS 17? This monocular night vision device is not as effective as the in /PVS 4. What do you think? Think about it again. Let's talk about it later." Chen Chen waved his hand and then said, "I'm not here to talk to you about equipment today. I want to ask you if you want to take your team out for some practice. Are you going to fight Nuakong?" The jackal did not show any surprise, as if Chen Chen's decision had already been expected by him. "Yes, and very quickly. We need people now. We need to organize at least a 200-man team to participate in the encirclement and suppression, including at least 50 elite troops. We will attack in layers, with the main force responsible for harassment and suppression, the elite forces for breakthroughs, and the core for decapitation. If you participate, you will have the opportunity to work alongside me and learn on the ground." After hearing these words, the jackal was really moved. He had seen and studied many battles fought by Chen Chen, but he had never personally participated in a battle of the Dongfeng Corps. There is nothing better than learning something in actual combat. Now that Chen Chen has given this opportunity, why not participate? But the problem arises again. This couldn't have been his decision alone. "I'll have to ask headquarters." "You don't even need to ask." "Well, I mean you can ask, but the result will be the same," Chen Chen said. "Why?" The jackal was really confused now. He looked at Chen Chen and failed to understand what he meant for a moment. Is this hard to imagine? If Jia is going to die, why shouldn't Nuakong die? Genius. The jackal let out a long sigh, then said, "Okay, I will participate in your action on my own behalf. However, I still need to report it to the company first. It won't be a big problem. However, since we are involved, we must take a portion of the profits. Can you accept this?" "Certainly," Chen Chen answered calmly. "Nuakong controls such huge interests. If we kill him, everyone can have enough to eat. Then don't call too many people." The jackal spoke quickly, behaving like a hyena protecting its food. "If you can give me 200 people, I will never call anyone else. But you didn't, so I had to pull the wooden ghost in." "Are you sure?" Jackal's brows slightly furrowed, and after hesitating for a moment, he said, "Their background is not clean. Let them fight Nuakong. You know what I mean? It's because they are not clean that they are beaten." After a pause, Chen Chen explained, "This is a token of surrender. Once we start fighting, the news will definitely not be hidden, and the one with the most ambiguous relationship with Nakam is the Wanfeng group. Instead of letting them sit on the sidelines and watch the fire, it is better to bring them in directly. As long as there is a slight mistake, their people will die. This is a deep binding of interests." "Understood." The jackal nodded slightly, then asked, "But will they agree?" "Oh." Chen Chen smiled evilly. "If they don't agree, I'll go find Bao Xiaomei. I want to see why he rejects me." The negotiations with Chase Li went extremely smoothly, and it didn't take much time for Chen Chen to receive feedback from the jackal. Chase Li has confirmed his participation and will send 4 combat teams with a total of 16 people to participate in the battle, including the jackal himself. After getting the confirmation, Chen Chen wasted no time and immediately went to Wanfeng restaurant to start negotiations with Peng Shuqing. Just as he expected, Peng Shuqing's initial behavior was quite ambiguous. They were originally a group of drug dealers who were dispersed and fled here, but later their business grew bigger and bigger, and their background became clearer and clearer. But in fact, until now, they still have some unclear relationship with the drug dealers in the Golden Triangle. Wanfeng Group does not sell drugs, nor does it participate in any related transportation or security activities. However, how many of the equipment used by drug dealers comes from them? How could the top management not know about this? I just don't care. And now, Chen Chen simply put his words on the table. "You are already at a critical stage of transformation. It is time to give up some unnecessary interests. Wanfeng Group runs casinos, does logistics, smuggling, and sells arms. Basically, no one will say anything because these things rarely harm ordinary innocent people. But drug trafficking is different. It's so bad. If it is revealed that they have connections with drug dealers, do you think Wanfeng Group can land safely? Of course, I'm not threatening you. We're just having a reasonable discussion on the issue. Now, think about it carefully. Does what I said make sense? Peng Shuqing's smiling face was still kind. After a few seconds of silence, he said, that makes a lot of sense, but the shipwreck, we are family, right? Can we open up and say a few words to each other? Generally speaking, when someone says words like our family or my true feelings, it means that he is starting to take advantage of you. But Chen Chen couldn't refuse, so he replied, okay, tell me about it. That Skylark helicopter, you didn't see it, okay? You say yes. I'll transfer someone here immediately. I may not have seen it. Chen Chen understood. In fact, the moment he saw the helicopter, he had already guessed that it was somehow related to Wanfeng Group. But on the one hand, Wanfeng Group has a deep foundation, and he cannot challenge it for the time being. On the other hand, several big bosses of Wanfeng Group have indeed been gradually cutting off their ties with drug trafficking in recent years, so Chen Chen is still willing to give them a chance. Hey? Give them a chance? It seems that his idea is a bit too crazy. But who cares? Anyway, as long as they are willing to send troops and kill Nuakong this time, he is willing to reduce a small amount of their past crimes. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Peng Shuqing breathed a sigh of relief. Then it's settled. We will send 200 people, including an elite team of 8 people. If you feel there aren't enough people, I can try to squeeze in more, but you must not look for anyone else, especially not Miss Bao. Don't worry, don't worry. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction. It seems that these people are very afraid of Hua State. Then he had to hold on to Miss Bao's card carefully. At the same time, Meng Bin was at the headquarters of the 756th Brigade. In Yi Bangxiong's office, Wang Mie and his adjutant were sitting on the sofa, drinking tea leisurely. He was in a good mood because the negotiations with the 505th Brigade were going smoothly. The other party had agreed to allow their troops to cross the border from Tachalike and carry heavy equipment to the vicinity of Jingdong. However, if they want to continue to Mengka, they still need to deal with one more person. That is Yi Bangxiong. As the 756th Brigade's offensive on Jingdong further accelerated, the Burmese army no longer had the final say in this area. The real boss is the 756th Brigade, which is blocking the Mingyang Highway and eyeing it covetously. So, Wang Mie came with full sincerity. He believed that his sincerity was enough to convince anyone because what he needed to ask was so simple that it only took a word from the other party. Would anyone refuse such a huge benefit? No, absolutely not. Gently spitting out the tea leaves in his mouth, Wang Mie turned to his adjutant and said, it should be Bangxiong who will come out to receive us in person in a while. Remember, you should greet him as soon as he enters the door to show our respect. But I won't stand up right away. You have to stop him first and introduce me. Only then will I stand up. This is a very simple etiquette in interpersonal communication. It is also a detail that we have to pay attention to if we want to gain greater profits for ourselves. Do you understand? Clear. The adjutant nodded solemnly. He had indeed learned a lot from Wang Mie during this trip. No matter where he went, he always looked very good at dealing with people. Everyone gave him face, and everyone smiled at him. Of course, not all of these people are friends. Some are even enemies. But so what? Wang Mie was able to get along with them very harmoniously. This was probably his ability. If not, the man in front of him would not have been able to become the most respected diplomat in the entire group. The adjutant looked at Wang Mie with more and more admiration, and Wang Mie was also very satisfied with his performance. This young man does have some talent. As long as he is trained well, he will definitely become his most capable assistant or even his successor. But unfortunately, the situation he faced was too bad. On a larger scale, the anti-drug measures have been tightened, and on a smaller scale, the relations within the 505th Brigade have loosened. There are enemies eyeing them covetously from the outside, and there are open and covert struggles due to vacant positions from within. If he wanted to survive in this situation, he had to keep climbing up, but it really took some talent. He sighed and was about to give a few more instructions when the door was suddenly pushed open. A man with a stern face and a solemn expression walked in. Hao Bang-hung. This was also the first time that Wang Mie saw him in person, but he had already studied the information about this person countless times. The other party was indeed, as the intelligence said, a typical military figure. This is actually beneficial to our side. Pure soldiers often have simple ideas and are easier to be guided and manipulated in negotiations. The adjutant also recognized Yi Bangxiong and stood up immediately, but before he could speak, Yi Bangxiong asked first, who is Wang Mie? The situation is not quite what we expected, but it doesn't matter, it's still under control. Wang stood up modestly and replied, Commander He, I am Wang Mie. Are you sure you are? Yi Bangxiong's words gave Wang Mie an ominous premonition. He always felt like he had seen this kind of speech in some intelligence. But he didn't have time to think about it, so he could only smile and answer. How could this be false? I am Wang Mie, and this is my adjutant. Bang! A bullet pierced Wang Mie's brain, and the adjutant froze in his place, his eyes filled with fear. However, he didn't remain frightened for long, because he was the second person to be shot. Blood was all over the floor. Yi Bangxiong waved his hands in disgust and said to the accompanying guards, clean this place up. Kill all the people brought by Wang Mie. Don't leave any alive. Are these people fucking crazy? They're paying me to sell a wreck. Who do they think they are? They want to negotiate a deal with me, just because they have a few guns? Don't they know what the wreck is for? If I dare to take this money, I might lose my life in a few days. Call the shipwreck and send the body to Mengka. Tell him I killed him myself. What the hell? Why do you have to send corpses to me? Inside the villa in Mengka City, Chen Chen looked at the 18 corpses in front of him and felt sick. He could hardly understand Yi Bangxiong's train of thought. You said you killed him, so why don't you find a place to bury him yourself? Or, let's take a step back. Can't you keep one alive and send the others back to Nuakong? Why do you have to send them to me? Dealing with corpses is also very troublesome, okay? If you want to find a place to bury them, you have to find a way to transport them to the mountains. If you don't bury them, you can't just throw them into the river. You have to chop them up, right? Who can do this? Do I look like someone who could do such a thing? Seeing his unhappy expression, Shi Dekai beside him couldn't help but feel a little funny. He walked up to Chen Chen and said, in fact, He Bangxiong's behavior is understandable. He is not afraid of large-scale attacks. Nuakong's army is said to have 2,000 soldiers, but now there are only 1,500 left. Excluding the ordinary drug dealers who have basically no training, there are only a few hundred people who can fight. In He Bangxiong's opinion, this number of people is not enough to fill the gaps in his teeth. But you are different. Although there are only more than 20 people in the Dongfeng Corps, you are really capable of sticking people to the wall. So, it's normal for him to cooperate with whoever poses the greatest threat to him. But the 505th Brigade is a bit strange. They actually agreed to Nuakong's request to let them pass through the country. Hearing Shi Dakai's words, Chen Chen frowned slightly, and then said, things at the 505th Brigade are not that simple. They are not only colluding with Nuakong, but also have connections with the Pamong Battalion. Perhaps the interests were too deeply tied together before, and the untying has not yet been completed. Of course, it's also possible that they just wanted to rob each other and put Nuakong's team in first. In any case, we don't have to worry about it now. Wang Mie is dead after all. Come to think of it, the deaths of the main leaders of the Nuakong gang were a bit inexplicable. There was actually nothing wrong with what Chen Chen said. From Lian Ilai to Sang Kong, and now to Wang Mie, the death of each leader was so sudden and so unprepared. TSK, I didn't want to kill you, but I killed you. Whose fault is it? It's not my fault. But no matter what, Wang Mie's death still made Chen Chen feel very happy. After all, this guy was actually the main culprit who commanded the massacre in his previous life, and was also one of the direct issuers of the order. In order to catch him, all parties really put in a lot of effort. He was arrested later than Na Cam, and it was he who extended the life of Na Cam's gang. Later, the Bao family spread the word that Nong Cam must be kept alive, but Wang Mie could be killed. This forced him to come out and surrender to the Burmese. Now his body was right in front of him, and no matter how smooth he tried, he couldn't make any waves. Oh, I was wrong. When he was tied with explosives and thrown into the Mekong River, he still caused quite a few waves. Wang Mie received special care, but the others were not. Chen Chen ordered the bodies to be taken out and disposed of together. Just as the pickup truck drove out, a strange phone call came in. Hello, who is this? Chen Chen asked. Mr. Shipwreck, I am Zhao Jiaoyang. Why are you calling me? Chen Chen was a little puzzled, but he still said politely, General Zhao, hello. His tone was very polite, but there was absolutely no servility in it. Zhao Jiaoyang on the other side did not seem to care, and said, Mr. Xinchuan, what happened between us before might have been just a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings will eventually be resolved. It may take time and patience, but I believe both sides have the time and patience. However, before that day comes, there are some things I may need to clarify with Mr. Rek. That is, I never really thought of letting Na Cam pass through Tachalike to Munka. It was just a strategy. We have always been strict in punishing drug dealers. The reason we are sending out this signal is to catch their main force in one fell swoop. But unfortunately, due to lack of communication, Commander He of the 756th Brigade failed to understand our intention and directly killed the pathfinders sent by the other side. Of course, I don't mean to blame you at all. This may be a simple and direct method. However, in view of the possible misunderstanding you may have due to this, I decided to take the initiative to explain it to you. Mr. Sinking Ship, can you understand what I am saying? I understand. Chen Chen answered immediately, but his forehead was already full of question marks. What the hell? Zhao Jiaoyang called me on his own initiative, and he even came to call me to ask for culpability. Not only did he not come to call me to ask for culpability, he even came to apologize. How could he still be so humble? Do he have such great power? It's impossible. After hearing his answer, Zhao Jiaoyang on the opposite side seemed relieved. He said a few meaningless pleasantries and then hung up the phone, leaving Chen Chen alone on the other end of the line confused. He didn't think he had the ability to roar like a tiger and shock everyone with it. He Bangxiong was afraid of me because I could really threaten him through various means, because his garrison was too close to Munka, and I also had connections with Northern Shan State and Hua State. If I forced them into a desperate situation, they would clash. If I couldn't win a war, it would not be difficult to carry out an assassination if I was well prepared. But Summon Jiaoyang? His 505th Brigade was far away from Munka, and there was Jingdong in between. Neither his own hand, nor the hand of Northern Shan State, nor even the hand of Hua State could reach it. What was there to be afraid of? Unless a flash of inspiration suddenly came to Chen Chen's mind. If you think the other person is afraid of you, then you'd better look behind you and make sure whether you are the fox who is taking advantage of the tiger's power. Golden Triangle, is it going to be a big move? This is the only explanation. Zhao Jiaoyang must have heard some news, which forced him to make a quick cut at this time, and even apologized to his enemy, just to prevent himself from being a chess piece in the hands of the chess player behind this big operation. You have to look at the owner before you beat the dog. He is not afraid of the dog, but the owner. Damn, could it be that the four-nation joint action was advanced? This is really possible. The shocking explosion on the Mekong River may have awakened the multinational forces lurking here. Everyone knows that Na Cam has suffered a severe blow. Even if we do not launch a resolute action to capture him in one fell swoop, it is only right to organize some small-scale actions to give it a try, to warn others, and to crack down on unstable elements. If this is true, then the momentum that I can leverage is really too great. This operation will definitely go smoothly, because you don't need to consider any external factors. All the issues that had troubled you before, such as geography, potential influence, power changes, etc., no longer exist. Big Brother didn't say anything, but Big Brother coughed, and everyone else had to shut up. Perfect. Chen Chen was in a good mood. He felt that his luck was improving. But on second thought, this isn't luck. The wind starts from the tip of the green reed. After he made the decision to blow up the ship, everything was actually doomed. Looking at his expression, Sure Dakai on the side also realized the change of things. He asked curiously, "Any news from above?" Chen Chen nodded subconsciously and replied, "Yeah, almost. No news, but hey, what are you talking about? What above? There's no above." "Oh, I see. I can't tell you." Sure Dakai gave Chen Chen a look that said he understood, but Chen Chen rolled his eyes and ignored him. The two men walked outside the villa. At this time, under Chen Chen's arrangement, the vegetation on the only sniper point had been burned. From a distance, two old excavators were digging the soil with frighteningly low efficiency. Seeing this scene, Chen Chen said thoughtfully, "I think I have to sell some excavators in the future. It can be regarded as a way to make money. Then I might as well sell the jadeite from here to you and sell it to the north. By the way, I've looked at all the jadeite you seized last time and those found in Chen Chen's house. The quality is pretty good. Do you want to sell it for money?" "No. Keep it for now, the price will go up later." Chen Chen answered casually. But soon he started to have trouble again. "I really need money. I really need money now. Mu Gue and Chai Silly do not need to pay commissions for the time being, and their commissions will be directly divided from the subsequent profits from the fight against Nong Cam. But the problem is that the cost of purchasing equipment alone will cost a lot of money. Because this time, he doesn't intend to make a small move. He wanted to purchase arms on a large scale and, within the limits permitted by local forces, stockpile a frightening number of rocket launchers. 360 shells, 10 launchers. According to the quotations from both Chaisley and Wanfeng Group, this item alone would cost $1.5 million US. And this is the discounted price for large-scale purchases. In addition, he needs at least 50 individual fuel air bombs, which will cost him another $500,000 US. The operating expenses were not enough, so he had to use his own savings of $2.6 million US to make up the shortfall. And this is not all the equipment he needs. In order to ensure 100% casualties, he also plans to use mortars to fire phosphorus aluminum incendiary bombs. The 7th Brigade already has 60 mortars, so it is not difficult to borrow two. However, phosphorus aluminum incendiary bombs are not so easy to get, and it costs money. War is really expensive. I didn't feel it during small-scale battles, but once the intensity started to increase, the money really flowed like water. Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh. Sure Dakai noticed his expression and said, "If you were short of money, ask me first. I have cash, and I should be able to cope with it if we gather together." Sure Dakai actually had no idea about the financial status of the entire Dongfeng Corps. At this time, his thoughts were quite simple. That is, if the team is short of money, all members of the team should contribute, not just Chen Chen alone. What? You said he should give out more if he took out more? Then why don't you say that he contributes the most, and everyone depends on him for a living? So, every time he had to spend money, he would make the same suggestion. However, it is good for him to think so, but Chen Chen cannot really do it. If we really do this, the rules will be disrupted. So he replied, "That's not necessary. At the moment, the difference in money is not too big. I can make up for it myself. Of course, if I need to, I will tell you directly. The main problem now is not the payment for the goods, but the fact that we asked for too much at one time. Both Chaisley and Wanfeng Group are under pressure to supply the goods. If you want the goods to arrive on time, you may have to pay more. Let's wait and see. If the cost is too high, I will talk to Chaisley and Mugue and deduct a portion of the subsequent profits. After all, we are the main attacker, and the cost of this cannot be borne by us alone." "That's true." Sure Dakai nodded in agreement, and then asked, "Will there be any problems with the operation of the equipment?" "No, the 107 Fire is very easy to operate. Even a dog can use it, not to mention the fuel air explosive bombs. Just aim at the people and shoot them. I will operate the mortar myself by then, so I can make use of the time when the shelling is not in progress. It's a pity that our team is still not strong enough. Otherwise, we can use Su Jin's barrage attack and Nuo Kong will be nothing but a chicken and a dog." Having said that, Chen silently made a mental note of what he needed to do. The firepower was getting stronger and stronger, and the training of infantry and artillery coordination should be put on the agenda. What he didn't know was that while he was thinking about how to use heavy firepower to blow Nakam into pieces, on the other side, the leaders of an elite team were discussing how to use the most accurate and advanced method to execute the ultimate decapitation on Nakam. In Bangkok, in the headquarters of the Underwater Demolition Attack Force, several men in military uniforms looked at the map on the wall and listened to the introduction of the commander in front of the map. That's so according to the latest intelligence, Xiaoxianyuan village is the most likely hiding place for Nuo Kong at the moment. This place is located in a primeval forest and is an important planting base for the Nakam gang. The area they control covers dozens of square kilometers, and it is very difficult to launch a decapitation operation without alerting them. A helicopter raid is also unacceptable. The outer sentries will quickly notify Nakam after discovering the traces of the helicopter, and he will flee at the first opportunity. The only relatively feasible method is to use drone airstrikes. But due to the complexity of the fortifications in Xiaoxianyuan village, we have reason to suspect that Nakam may have relied on underground bunkers to avoid bombing. So if we want to use drones for airstrikes, they must be equipped with bunker buster bombs. As soon as he finished speaking, someone in the audience spoke up. "If we're going to use bunker buster bombs, we might as well just send out fighter jets. This plan is too expensive, and it will be hard to get it passed if it's just to fight a drug dealer. The procurement cost of a bunker buster is as high as $4 million, and without precision guidance, even one may not be effective. I think we still have to send ground troops to attack. No, the expected casualties of a ground attack are too great." The commander answered without hesitation. But because of his veto, the entire discussion came to a standstill. The available solutions are too costly, and the low-cost ones are not available. It's very troublesome. What about fire attack? Someone suddenly asked. Xiaoxianyuan village is not the river island of Wangnanfu. Such a battle example is difficult to replicate. I want you to learn other people's tactics instead of focusing on unimportant parts like this. Is there real strength in setting fires? Their real strength is in choosing combat positions and seizing combat opportunities. The commander shook his head helplessly and finally fell silent. In the short term, I really can't think of a better solution. According to feedback from people in Chaizili, the Dongfeng Corps is also considering attacking Xiaoxianyuan village. I don't know whether they will succeed or fail this time. Perhaps they can come up with a better tactic? If they really succeed, I'm afraid there will be another classic case in my textbook.